Go cool blue on my light setting. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on YouTube, we say good morning to the Winnipeg Jets diaspora and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We got comprehensive Jets talk for you for the next couple of hours. So good to see so many of you joining us bright and early this morning. Nice to hear from. We got people coming from Thunder Bay. We got people coming from Uruguay. We got people coming from San Francisco. Good morning to everybody. So nice of you to be with us here live on this Saturday morning as we get you going for some Jets talk. Alongside Dave Minuk, alongside Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mindell. And as I mentioned, we are thrilled to see you on this Saturday morning. Gentlemen, good to see you guys as well. We got some new microphones. We're getting a little bit more professional. I mean, at least, equipment-wise, personally, I don't think any of us are any more professional than we were before. But, making baby steps here and getting this thing to look a little bit better day by day.
Yeah, we picked up some new microphones, so hopefully that when folks are listening, they can hear us loud and clear.
Ezzy, you have anything to say on that front?
I'm here. What's up, boys?
Nothing.
Ready to do the show.
You are unusually quiet. I just wanted to make sure you weren't, having a stroke or something.
No. I'm healthy.
Like
I'm here. It's
let's
nice,
not get
cool
carried away.
Saturday morning.
Let's not get carried away on the I'm healthy part. You're here. Not sure about the health, but you are here.
Yeah, I'm semi-healthy. Let's go with that. But no, happy to do another podcast. This is the new world where, the three of us are in a different location. I'm at my mother-in-law's house for this show today. And I know, Drew, you're back home. So, ready to talk Jets. Let's go.
I set up a nice little room in my basement, and nobody's any the wiser as to actually what is this room, but that's okay. That's exactly right. Let's talk about some Jets talk. Obviously we start with the Jets week that was, and it was a quiet week for the Jets relatively. They played last Sunday, that comeback victory against the Vancouver Canucks, a demoralizing defeat for the Vancouver Canucks, and then they followed that up with a comeback victory on Thursday against the Montreal Canadiens, the rematch, of course, in just about 12 hours from now, 9 o'clock tonight, the rematch between the Jets and the Habs. And, this is probably the last sort of quiet week the Jets are going to have for a long time. We know that once March hits, it's basically, every second night. That's really when the Jets ramp up, when all those games in hand that they have, they're going to make up for them. And, I think the Jets so far, it's been a soft schedule. We know that. They've been playing against some of the weaker teams in the North Division. But that being said, you can't complain about the results. 3 victories in a row now for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there were some people that were a little bit nervous, the other night when the Jets went down 2-0. But, I texted Dave and I said, the Jets are down 2-0. This is exactly where they want the Habs, right? Because we've seen this story so many times, boys, where the Jets go down a goal or go down a couple of goals. I think it's, 6 times now, 6 of the 12 victories for the Jets now are, when they're behind in the first period. So I wasn't nervous at all. And, it's really, first off, we have to mention, Mark Scheifele's 11-game point streak. He just continues to lead this team offensively. But, it really was unfortunate to see, how Carey Price is playing, because in my opinion, especially on the 4th and the 5th Jets goals, it was, Dubois who got the Jets' 4th goal, or pardon me, it was Nate Thompson who scored the 4th goal. Dubois got the 5th goal. Of course, the winner was our boy Nate Thompson, but Carey Price to me was really battling that puck, Dave. And I still think he is a top goaltender, but if he's going to continue to play like that, I mean, it's going to be really tough for the Montreal Canadiens to climb up in those standings or even remain in the 4th spot in that North Division. And we're going to see Jake Allen. We know that our friend John Liu of TSN reported that yesterday. Jake Allen's going to get the start tonight for the Habs, but that was really tough to see because Price was really struggling and fighting the puck, I thought. So, you give the Jets a lot of credit, but it was, especially, Dubois' goal out of position. He just doesn't seem to be the normal Carey Price that we're used to.
You could certainly say that, had the Habs received average goaltending on Thursday, It's certainly a closer game than it ended up being, 5-3, 6-3 with the empty netter. But I think the weak link for the Montreal Canadiens on Thursday was Carey Price, and it really has been for a lot of this season. And to the Jets' advantage, and they certainly don't need to apologize for that as well. They took advantage of a goaltender who was struggling. They got shots from some dangerous areas. And, after that first period where they really didn't play that poorly, but were down 2-0 after a couple miscues, it was all Jets at that point, Dave, and really I'm going to say a bit of a dominant effort, especially only giving up 13 shots in the final 40 minutes. That's not Jets-like so far this season.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me is that Carey Price could probably just speak to Jake Allen to get some sort of sense as to what it requires to have a reset. I mean, it's ironic that he's the backup now, and he had to do a similar sort of thing in St. Louis. If everyone remembers, he didn't even make that trip to Winnipeg with the Blues because
Copley started for the Blues.
That's right, Thunder Bay's Phoenix Copley. So you have a guy.
That's two Thunder Bay references.
There we go. So you have a guy who has gone through it in his backup, and we see with Laurent Brossoit and Connor Hellebuck how close that relationship is. So I suspect, not that Carey Price really needs a lot of advice, but at some time everybody could use a little, and I suspect Jake Allen can give him some. And you're right, Drew. It's not the type of game that we've come to expect from the Winnipeg Jets, but I mean, they turned it on. And as he, texted me, I was at the game, and as he texted me and said, like, there's no question the Jets are winning this game. I mean, it seemed clear based on the way they were playing that game, right?
I mean, obviously it was a little bit half joking, Dave. I mean, I obviously don't know what's going to ultimately happen, but just watching that game, I thought the first period was very even. And for the most part, it was a strange game. And this is just, my take on it, boys. It's probably not going to be a hot take. You guys might disagree, but I mean, I just kind of thought that, this game was completely wide open. And sometimes that happens when a team is up 2-0, right? Like you didn't get the feeling after one period that the Jets were out of it, or, Montreal was really controlling the play. What were the shots? I think they were tied at 7, if I'm not mistaken, after one period. And you look at the possession, it was open, even. And you had, probably a little bit of an advantage, I think, when it came to the high danger chances.
I think Montreal had a little bit of higher level,
right.
But...
And then, score effects come in there. But I mean, I think that the Jets really, the story has been their resilience for sure. I know it's a cliche in sports, but I mean, they really have shown that they don't let a 1 or 2 goal deficit really get to them. And I think what we're seeing too is this Scheifele line with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler. I mean, they're making it easy out there, boys. Like they're looking good on the power play. And obviously, Kyle Connor got the ball rolling with a couple of G's, and they were nice goals, obviously aided by a nice little, Blake Wheeler bunt pass. But I mean, the top 2 lines are really going right now. And Stastny, we thought last week, might move to the wing. But of course, it was Pierre-Luc Dubois that moved to the wing, and he's got 5 points in his 2 games back. So I don't see Paul Maurice really changing these lines up much. I mean, we'll see, but why would you?
Why would you? You get the offense, certainly. I mean, that top line, the way they've gelled so far is incredible. I love watching Ehlers and Connor play together. I mean, right now, if you're an opposing team against this Winnipeg Jets team, it's really pick your poison. And none of the answers none of the decisions they're going to make an opposing team are good ones, because if one line doesn't hurt you, the other line's hurting you. And this Jets team, when they gave up that third goal, when it was 2-1 after, Blake Wheeler bunted the puck over to Kyle Connor on the penalty kill, and then the Habs came back, relatively quickly and made it 3-1. I was like, okay, maybe this is not, the Jets' night, but they stuck with it. And that's really when Carey Price's play just almost fell off that cliff. I mean, that second goal was a beautiful passing play. I mean, that was absolutely textbook. Couldn't draw it up any better, starting with Sami Niku's pass, out of his own zone, and a beautiful passing play. Can't blame the goalie on that. But Blake Wheeler's goal, I mean, Carey Price needs to make that save. You're only up 1 if you're the Habs. You're a fragile team confidence-wise. You need your goalie to make that save. And I mean, he didn't make it, and then it was all downhill from that point in time for the Habs. I mean, the fourth and the fifth goals were, I mean, they were just, the fourth goal should never go in. I mean, the third goal should never go in, and the fourth goal should never go in. The Jets aren't complaining, though. They're glad they're going to walk away with the clean 2 points.
Right. And when you're struggling like the Habs are, right, like they've lost, 7 of 9 or 7 of 10, whatever it is, they're in a bad stretch right now, and you can't have your number 1 goalie playing like that. And obviously, Carey Price is most likely going to be a Hall of Fame goaltender. So it's not like we're saying that, Carey Price is done as an NHL goaltender, because I don't think that's the case at all. I think he's just in a very bad, part of the season right now. And I think Jake Allen deserves to be in the net tonight versus the Jets, right? Like, just based on the way he's playing, we know his numbers are better when it comes to save percentage and goals saved above expectation. So, I mean, it's just really unfortunate to see. I've always been a big Carey Price fan, but that wasn't his night. And it's quite possible that next time he's between the pipes, boys, he's going to be better.
Let me ask you this, Dave. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live here on YouTube. Join in on the conversation. Of course, there's the live chat. People joining us from all around the world. We got another. John is here from Singapore. So far it's between, I believe, Singapore and Uruguay for whoever's joining us from the furthest away. I think I saw somebody maybe from Mexico as well. So great to see everybody on this Saturday
morning. You've been
morning.
to all of those countries, Drew.
I haven't been. In fact, I'm banned from most of those countries. And it's the opposite, in fact. But, let me ask you this, Dave. Another game, another Jets comeback. They did it against Vancouver last Sunday. They did it against the Habs on Thursday. And there was sort of not a talking point, but it was certainly a lot of the questions that were asked post-game on Thursday was about the ability for this team to come back.
Yeah.
What do you think it does confidence-wise for this team to be down 2 goals and to basically not even miss a beat, not skip a beat, not even blink? They just seem to be playing at such a high level, especially confidence-wise right now, that nothing is phasing them.
Drew, it's interesting. I thought Kyle Connor's, I don't remember if it was post-practice or post-game, but it was an availability with Kyle Connor, and I think I tweeted like his confidence in this group is just resonating throughout the course of the interview, and it was clear his belief that they can score. Now, look, you don't want to go down 2-0 every game and have to come back and have to do that, right? That's, you don't want to write a 10-page history paper on the last night 17 different times. So it's not exactly ideal, obviously. Or maybe I should have said a math paper for Ezzy's dad. But the truth is that, again, you've hit on it. Like, the first two lines are just deadly. The third line, Mason Appleton's been a revelation the last, I don't know how many games.
Can we talk about that pass for a second? Because that's not the first time that we've seen Mason Appleton make a pass like that. And I think you're 100% right, Dave. Like, when you look at that game, when you look back on that game, what's going to stand out? Probably, Kyle Connor's goals, probably, maybe the play of Pierre-Luc Dubois getting the 5th goal, right? But that goal from Nate Thompson, not only was it the winner, but it's one of those goals where, Mason Appleton gets a big assist, right? Like, that's an A+ assist, not one of those, okay assists where he happened to, give the puck to a good shooter, right? So I realized that, the last few weeks we've been singing his praises, but he deserves it, right? Because when you look at, all of the changes that the Jets have had up front, not so much on the back end, but, with Pierre-Luc Dubois coming into the lineup, a couple of weeks ago, we were saying, like, this might cause some problems because you might have to move a good player to the wing, or, Andrew Kopp, who was playing in the top 6, might have to move to the third line. But you've got Lowry and Kopp back reunited. We know how good they are. And it just seems to me like Mason Appleton is the perfect fit on that line.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think when it was Lowry, Appleton, and Perreault, they were one of the top lines in the NHL. So, I mean, you add Andrew Kopp, who's, a smart player like Matthew Perreault, and that line is just going to continue to do what they do. And Paul Maurice has spoken about that. He talked about years ago, that was a hold line. That was a line that they put him out against anyone, and they wouldn't expect offense, but they also wouldn't expect to be scored against. And now he expects that line to contribute. And we're seeing it, right? You're seeing guys, Mason Appleton, career high in points, and he did it in about 30 less
an hour.
Yeah, so I mean, these guys are taking advantage of the opportunity, and I think that is probably the key, right? From this Jets perspective, yes, Drew, you're winning, but the truth is, are you winning optimally? No, you're not, because you're having to come from behind a lot of games, as we've talked about. And I think there's that idea of not wanting to burn guys out, right? We talked about early on in the season, Mark Scheifele was playing like 25, 26 minutes a game. Blake Wheeler was, playing a significant number of minutes. Those have all decreased. And that's, I think, one of the keys for this Jet season, especially in a condensed season, is having a confidence to roll 4 lines. So, are we going to see a 4th line with a Jansen Harkins? I mean, the one thing I haven't really understood, and I get why coaches are loath to make changes when they're winning. And what I'll be interested to see is, will the coaching staff make a change to get fresh legs in for older veteran players? Like, will Nate Thompson come out on a back-to-back to get a Jansen Harkins in to inject some jump in your lineup? That to me is the question. Right now, they've had 3 days off. They've had these long breaks. It hasn't been significant, but I wonder what will happen into that. I think Paul Maurice said they have 2 practices between now and the end of April. So to me, again, like that's 2 full practices. Obviously, they'll have optionals, but they have 2 full practices scheduled. So this schedule is about to your point earlier, Drew, is about to ramp up. And I think that it's how you use that taxi squad. One, because you don't want these guys wasting away anyways. But 2, it's about the efficiency of getting, your fourth line minutes, so you're not burning out 1, 2, and 3.
Well, to your point there, Dave. I mean,
go ahead, Drew.
Once Comrie is out of quarantine, and Eric Comrie is going to join us coming up in about an hour or so from now, 10:15 this morning. We're going to speak to Eric Comrie. He's got lots of time on his hands, given that he's still in quarantine. But once he's out of quarantine, the Jets are going to have another roster spot. Because we're assuming at that point in time Anton Forsberg is going to go on waivers, and if he's claimed, he'll go down. If he's not claimed, he'll go down.
He'll go back to Edmonton.
That's probably the case. I mean, he's not going to be long for the Jets because Comrie can go down to the taxi squad after the Jets claimed him on clearing waivers and everything. So the Jets are going to have an extra roster spot. And, to your point, Dave, you got guys like Jansen Harkins, who wants to desperately get back in that lineup, and a guy like Christian Vesalainen, who, of course, desperately wants to get back in that lineup. So when you do have back-to-back games, or when it's looking like a guy like, Nate Thompson, and that's a great story, and we're happy for Nate getting that goal, a Purim miracle, as we all tweeted, on Thursday night. But, if he needs a break, if it's 3 and 4 nights or 4 and 6 nights, as the schedule really is going to look like for the next couple months, you bring in a young guy, you bring in those young legs, and you just constantly are maybe churning your roster, but not in a negative sense, just more in a effectiveness sense and in a youthful sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Paul Maurice, boys, we've been covering this team since they came back. Obviously, Claude Noel was the first coach, but I mean, we've been covering Paul Maurice for, 7.5 years now.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
He seems to always surprise us. Right. And, we've got the back-to-back coming up at home against Vancouver. And I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if, you saw either Jansen Harkins or Christian Vesalainen, or maybe both come into the lineup. I don't know if both come in, but, Harkins would be the obvious choice to come in first. And then, as Dave said, I mean, maybe it's for Nate Thompson because we've seen Harkins on that fourth line as the center. But, Trevor Lewis is a guy that I know that, some people look at and they say, well, why is he a staple of that fourth line? But to me, he's a perfect fit on that fourth line.
And the penalty kill.
Exactly. And he's a really effective penalty killer. He can chip in the odd goal. We've seen him already get a goal this year. You're not expecting a lot of goals out of him. I mean, if he gives you 5 to 10 goals this year, you're going to be pretty happy. So I don't necessarily know if Trevor Lewis is a guy that you should expect to come out. But, I mean, Nate Thompson, just for obvious reasons, could be a guy that, comes out for Harkins. But, these are good problems to have for Paul Maurice, but they're not great problems for a guy like Vesalainen because what has it been, 10 days since he's played a game, maybe more? So, I mean, you don't necessarily want a guy like that factors in long-term to your plans, first round pick. But, we've seen other teams, have to, sit out their really good players, good young players. So we'll see what happens. But I agree with you, Drew. Like when you're winning, I don't know why you would, especially, Nate Thompson scores the winning goal. I don't necessarily know why you would take him out of the lineup, but, there might be, always the chance.
I'd be surprised if they make many changes for today. I mean, we know that Poolman sounds like he's pretty healthy, but, again, we've seen the Jets err on the side of caution. We saw that with Dubois, him not playing, I guess, on that Friday night game in Vancouver and him coming back on the Sunday. We've seen the Jets err on the side of caution. So why not give, I think Niku deserves another game based on his performance. I thought he played well on Thursday night.
Well, it was quiet, right? And like I think he played around 13 minutes, right? And quiet for Niku is a good thing, right? Like you saw him pick up an assist and you saw how he can move the puck. Paul Maurice talked about that after the game. That's why he was inserted into the lineup over, maybe a player like Logan Stanley, right? So I agree with you, Drew. Like Niku was solid, but I just thought it was overall kind of a quiet performance. And I was kind of, thinking to myself, I wonder if, Niku scoring his first career NHL goal against Montreal had anything to do with that, because sometimes players, when they have success against other teams, they go into the lineup. I don't think that was why, but absolutely. I mean, I think it's going to be a tough decision if Tucker Poolman is ready to go. And it sounds like there is a good chance that he's going to be ready to go tonight. And, again, the Jets are winning, and we're talking about, potential lineup changes. So when you're losing, usually the conversation is going to take more of a negative tone. But when you're sitting at 12-6-1, and you've got, a couple of high draft picks in Christian Vesalainen and Jansen Harkins not able to get into the lineup because of the veteran players that are currently playing on the fourth line, it's a problem, but it's not necessarily, the worst thing, because we know that with the condensed schedule, as Drew mentioned, these guys will eventually get into the lineup. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's as early as those games against Vancouver, Dave.
And we'll know more, of course, about the Jets lineup for today's game. I believe they're skating, Dave. You know the schedule off the top of your head. 10:30 this morning, if I'm not mistaken, is when the Jets morning skate is. So we will assuredly bring you the latest from Winnipeg Jets practice or Winnipeg Jets game day skate as soon as we have the information for you. And of course, you are listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live here on YouTube and, of course, available for podcast via download later on. So be sure to subscribe. Bang that subscribe button. What is it? Smash that subscribe button.
Smash it.
Smash that subscribe button so you are alerted each and every time we go live here on the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. And while you're at it, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you get it sent to your device each and every week. I'm Drew Mindell. Ezra Ginsburg's here. Dave Minuk is here as well. Gentlemen, I want to talk about the Jets' right side defense now. And, it sort of got lost in the shuffle in the game on Thursday night, but they had Josh Morrissey playing on his off wing. Josh Morrissey played the right side. Nathan Beaulieu played the left side. And I think a lot of people were a little dismayed at that Habs third goal when Nathan Beaulieu went for the clean open ice hit and absolutely whiffed on it, leading to that Habs third goal. Didn't end up costing the Jets anything, but that right side of the Jets defense, it's pretty thin depth-wise. After Tucker Poolman, if Poolman's not in the lineup, as he hasn't been a couple different times this year, the Jets really don't have another option on the right side right now. Is that something that if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, you should be looking to address? I mean, obviously you're not. I don't think anyone's expecting you to go out and get a top two, even a top four right side defenseman, given the salary cap situation and given, quarantines and all that jazz. But a depth right side defenseman, is that something the Jets should be interested in trying to acquire right now, Ezzy?
Yeah, well, according to Elliot Friedman, Brandon Montour is available, so maybe Chevy should just make that trade today. But
and in the show plan, I did mention Brandon Montour as an option the Jets could afford that probably wouldn't cost them too much in terms of a draft pick.
Yeah, and I like Montour a lot. He's a guy that can chip in offensively. He's good defensively. But no, there's no doubt that, right now the right side is not as deep as the left side. And that is not what it was for how many years, guys, when you had Trouba and Buff and Tyler Myers and Poolman, back to, 2018 when the Jets went on that run. So there's no doubt, that's caused some problems. I'm just going to put this out there. I don't like Josh Morrissey on his offside. I really don't like it. Dave talked about this last week. Ville Heinola is a guy that has played on the right side. Dylan Sandberg is a guy that asked Pascal Vincent and the coaching staff to play on his offside. So there's always the chance that one of those two guys, when they do eventually get called up by the Jets, play on the right side. But I mean, Mike McIntyre's talked about this. Our good buddy Murad Atesh of The Athletic has talked about this. What makes the most sense is to put Dylan DeMello up there with Josh Morrissey. And then you don't have to have, Josh Morrissey playing on his offside. And Paul Maurice has answered these questions. He has his reasons why, he's decided to keep, Nathan Beaulieu and Dylan DeMello together. But I would be pretty surprised, guys, if at some point, and it might be, as soon as tonight, it might be on this homestand, that we see Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello together.
To me, Dave, it seems bizarre that, early in the season, I understood why DeMello was struggling. I mean, obviously he missed that first road trip because he had a baby, and obviously kids are your priorities more than your team, and nobody will fault him for that. And it's taken him a little bit of time to get his legs underneath him. But to me, he's back playing a very solid, not flashy game. So I don't know, you have found money in the Forbort Pionk combination. I mean, nobody expected Derek Forbort to fit in as seamlessly as he has with Neil Pionk. But if you go Forbort and Pionk, and then you get DeMello and Morrissey back together and back playing like we saw them, at the end of the regular season last year, it just seems like Maurice to me here is being I'm going to say unnecessarily stubborn. I understood it for a while, getting him acclimatized, getting DeMello back up to speed. But from the last few games, I'd say it's time to put that pairing back together.
Yeah, I think it's time to get the band back together. I would think that you'd have to have, like, we saw what they were able to do last year, right? In the 10 games, and it's not a huge sample size, obviously, but they played well together. And it's not as if we've seen them a ton this year, right? So why not throw them out? You know, when especially when the team is rolling, you've won 3 straight games. To your point, Drew, you're I wouldn't say comfortably in the playoff race, but you've banked points in the bank standings, which is always important. And when else are you going to get this opportunity? You know, I mean, especially as things get more and more condensed, you know, you're going to be less and less likely that to be taking, you know, a risk, if you will. So to me, and not that I feel that that's a big risk, I mean, we've seen the connectivity between DeMello and Morrissey. We see Morrissey is better on his natural side. And, you know, you've got Pullman who will play on the right side once he's healthy again. You know, the need to keep Nathan Beaulieu in the lineup at this point, I'm not certain why that's even still happening. Like, when you've got other options, Sami Niku's look good. You know, I mean, obviously it was only one game, but we just talked about it. You've got Logan Stanley. I mean, I have to tell you guys, and I say this as someone who's watched, I say this as someone who watched every single pro hockey game that Logan Stanley has played almost. And as you guys know, I was I knew that I felt that Logan Stanley was an NHLer. I felt he'd eventually make the NHL. But if you would have told me 6 months ago that people were clamoring for Logan Stanley to be in the Jets lineup, I'd tell you you're nuts. I tell you that it's insane. And it's crazy. Like, I'm looking at the chat. People are talking about Logan Stanley on Twitter. People are like, where's Logan Stanley? And that's a great testament to what Logan Stanley was able to do to get himself into a position. But I think it's hugely humorous or ironic that the fan base is now calling for Logan Stanley, which was, was a name that largely got a lot of folks up in arms. Yeah.
Well, you know, if you had said a year ago we'd be living through a global pandemic, people probably would have called you a liar as well at that point in time. But it is a year ago, but you know, to your point, David, it is you know, somewhat astounding that Logan Stanley seems to be, I mean, just putting him in there as a, you know, he would know his role as a third pairing left side guy with even maybe a little bit of upside that is untapped. So I agree with you that I'm not sure, especially after Nathan Beaulieu's performance on Thursday night, which wasn't anything to write home about, and I'm being charitable, why you wouldn't, you know, try and put Stanley back in the lineup. And I did find it interesting that Maurice, I believe it was yesterday or if it was post game on Thursday, Maurice sort of defended Beaulieu and said that he's been playing well and everything else. And I know they like his physicality, but I mean, that whiff was pretty glaring for a guy who really hasn't been that great that he deserves a permanent spot in the Jets lineup.
Right. And you know, we don't obviously want to pile up on Nate Beaulieu, right? No. But, you know, he didn't have a good game last game against Montreal. He just didn't. Anybody who was watching that game, or even if you want to look at, you know, the advanced statistics, he didn't have a good game. So with Tucker Pullman coming back, guys, if he does play tonight, you know, it's interesting, right? Because, you know, are you going to possibly, you know, put Pullman and Stanley in? You know, that would be a lot more surprising to me, because what would probably make the most sense, right, is Sami Niku comes out, Tucker Pullman goes in, Dylan DeMello goes up to the top pair, and then Nate Beaulieu and Tucker Pullman is your third pair, right?
Which was fine last year, by the way.
Exactly.
They were fine last year.
You know, that's kind of what I would expect out of the Jets tonight if Tucker Pullman is ready to go. If Tucker Pullman isn't ready to go, I do think there is a chance that Logan Stanley goes into the lineup. But if Pullman is ready to go, I don't necessarily know that, you know, Paul Maurice puts Pullman and Stanley in, because then the question becomes, who are you taking out of the lineup at that point?
No, I would expect that if you're going to do anything for tonight's game, you're doing minor tweaks. And I would personally be surprised if Pullman draws back in. You know, if you played Niku on Thursday and you played Niku, you know, because, you know, and I know you played him over Pullman, but you played him because, you know, that was the kind of game Montreal plays, a fast game where you needed a quick outlet passes and things of that nature. Then, you know, I don't know what would change so dramatically between Thursday, where Niku played well, and Saturday. I would give him another shot just simply as a reward for having a good performance on Thursday night. A guy who's been, you know, really out of the lineup for a significant period of time. He deserves to get that opportunity to come back into the game. Well, we have our first guest of the morning joining us now here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show from Sportsnet. We're pleased to welcome to the program Sean Reynolds. Sean's appearance on the program is brought to you by Dr. Les Rikus and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, official dentist of Illegal Curve Hockey. Don't be an Ezzy. Always wear a mouth guard. Give yourself peace of mind protection, as well as facial, teeth, and mouth protection. To make an appointment to get your teeth to ting, visit Linden Market Dental Center.com. And without further ado, Sean Reynolds, good morning. Welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
You guys see the smile on my face?
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, gents.
And Sean, I was going to say, you don't need to go see Dr. Les Rikus. You've got some nice pearly whites there.
Oh, I don't know about that. I try. I brush my teeth every once in a while, hold it together.
That, you know what, Sean, and it's, I guess if you're looking for silver linings in the whole demise of TSN radio, the silver lining is now that we can welcome you to the program without having to worry about the Sportsnet/TSN battle. And, here in Winnipeg, we're all friends, and it is so great that you're able to make time for us on this Saturday morning and welcome you to the program for the first time ever. First time, they say you never forget your first time. So hopefully that'll be the case with you here, Sean.
Yeah, you know what? I've had such good conversations with you guys away from the radio. And I think there's so many times that we've, been talking with each other and we kind of end it saying, man, wouldn't it be nice to do this officially? You know what I mean? These are such good conversations. But I mean, to your point, I guess silver lining, but what a terrible thing for the city, for this market, losing TSN, losing that voice. I mean, we're so much better off, one, with having a venue for people to be able to talk hockey and dig into these issues. But two, a place for all the phenomenal people, including yourselves, who worked at TSN, to have their voices heard. There's a whole lot of talents at TSN. And as you'd mentioned, on the face of it, it's TSN and it's Sportsnet, but behind the scenes, we're all really, really good friends. We all really get along. And boy, I sure hope that there's going to be places for those voices and your voices going forward.
Well, we're loud enough that even if we don't have a broadcasting platform, you'll still be able to hear from us.
Just yell it from a street corner.
From a street corner. We can be raving lunatics on the corner, just as much as anybody else. Sean, our Illegal Curve question of the day, and I'm going to start with this one for you, is, the Jets right now have the 6th best points percentage in the NHL. Is that an accurate reflection of where this team is among the upper echelon in the NHL, or is it a bit of a mirage based on maybe the weakness of their opponents so far and the weakness of the North Division?
Yeah, I mean, instinctually, I feel like there's a little bit of it being a weak division, right? A little bit of a defense optional division. And I mean, I've had these discussions behind the scenes about is it legit? Is the North Division legit? And the thing that troubles me out of the whole thing is that the teams like Calgary, I was talking with Ryan Leslie, our Sportsnet guy out of Calgary, about this very issue. And he said, well, I don't know. I mean, it seems legit to me because Calgary was supposed to be a legit team and they are really, really struggling, right? In Montreal at the beginning of the year, you heard media across the NHL talking about maybe Montreal is the NHL's best team the way they're playing. And now they're absolutely getting pummeled in this division. So, I mean, I do think there's something to be said about the style of hockey that is being played is a style that is maybe not a playoff brand of hockey. I don't think the Winnipeg Jets, as good as they've been, as confident as they are in their scoring and as confident as they are in their depth, I don't think you're getting away with coming back from a 2-goal deficit as often as they are if you're playing a different brand of hockey that may be played in some of the other divisions. So in that sense, maybe it's slightly a bit of a mirage, but I don't think that if you were taking the rest of the league and now throwing them together in a hodgepodge, I don't think the Jets would be that far off of where you see them right now in the league standings. I think they got something going on here. I think they've got really, really good depth. And the one thing that I think the Jets, and it's the reason I thought they were going to make the playoffs at the beginning of the year. The one thing that I think the Jets do really good that you can see teams like Vancouver haven't been able to do. Montreal right now is not able to do. Edmonton wasn't able to do it for a while. Calgary can't seem to figure it out entirely over the years. But the Winnipeg Jets seem to be able to squeeze the most juice out of the orange as they can every time, depending, last year, all the injuries they had, this year, questionable whether or not they've got a championship caliber defense. but yet they're getting it done on both ends of the ice. You put this team on the ice, and whether it's through the coach, the leadership group, or the roster as a whole, and all the players pulling on the rope at the same time, they get the most out of this lineup as they can.
I would agree with that, Sean. And, just going back to the Montreal Canadiens, who, of course, the Jets play tonight. You can watch that game on Sportsnet, of course, and you can listen to it on CJOB radio. When you look at that Habs team, we were talking about this right before you came on. Like, where do you see the Habs going from here? Because we know that, Dominic Ducharme has come in and the Habs let Claude Julien go, but like we couldn't help but point out that Carey Price looked like he was struggling in net. And you never want to put it all on Carey Price, because there were some goals in that game where, the defense looked like a bit of a tire fire in their own end. But what is your kind of take on the Montreal Canadiens? Because you mentioned the Calgary Flames, the Oilers are obviously, surging up the standings, but what's your kind of assessment on this Montreal Canadiens team? Is it a fragile team? Is it a team that doesn't look like they're playing the same in front of Carey Price as they are in front of Jake Allen? What's kind of your assessment on where this team is now? Because I thought they were most likely going to be a playoff team, and right now it looks like they might be slipping out of that playoff spot.
Yeah, you said the word, Ezzy, fragile. That's exactly what this team is. And I think if you were watching that last game against the Winnipeg Jets, it was the perfect example of that. They go up, they build up a 2-goal lead, 2-0, then they go up 3-1. And then you can see, and this is the point I just made about the Jets, is the opposite. It's the problem for the Montreal Canadiens. The Jets throughout that game, despite getting scored on, to me, they look like a confident group. It doesn't matter. They're falling down. They look confident. They look like they're in the game, and they inexorably take over that game. But I don't throw it all on the Jets saying they just played really well and found their game and moved past the Montreal Canadiens. You could see the Montreal Canadiens wilting as that game went on. And it's been a problem for this team, not just in this last stretch. I think they've won or lost 7 of their last 9 games and were phenomenal before. The fact that they're only behind the Jets by 3 points in the standings tells you how hot their start is, that they could basically have thrown almost the last 10 games out the window and still be right there. But it's not just a problem now. This was a problem last year. They went on an 8-game losing streak. Their season's over before it even starts. And then they fight their way back into the playoffs. And you think, okay, this is a team that's learned from its lessons. It's figured it out. It's gone through its low patch. It knows how to survive that low patch. It's stronger for having gone through that. And then Christmas time, I got to get an emergency call to go cover the Canadiens right after Christmas. They're on their Florida trip. I'll take it, guys. I'll go spend some time in Florida. And it's they're playing the Tampa Bay one night and then Florida the next night, and they're in the playoffs. And the storyline, I'm teeing up the game, and here's the story: the Canadiens, they're in the playoffs, win, and they take a team that's chasing them and put them a little further in the rearview mirror, lose, and they drop right out of the playoffs. I think they were sitting in third at the time, drop right out of the playoffs and got to fight their way back in. Well, they lose that game and then continue to go on another 8-game losing streak. Like, when are you going to learn your lessons? And it's funny, I asked Shea Weber about it yesterday, what he sees. Here's this guy who's, done amazing things with Team Canada, been on so many successful teams. He seems like the kind of guy that a team with that captain shouldn't be letting a room getting away on him. Joel Edmondson is 2 years removed from a very, very durable St. Louis team winning the Stanley Cup. They've got players on this roster who should be able to figure out what's wrong and stop these long slides, at least some time before you're reaching 8-game stretches or losing 7 of your last 9. They can't seem to do it. And fragile is the exact word for it. This team's psyche, they break easily. They can't pick up the pieces easily. And right now, that's what we're watching, is a team with a new coach who's trying to patch that psyche together, hold it together with masking tape long enough that it kind of holds, and then maybe they can go forward. Because we've seen from this team time and again, not just last year, but definitely at the beginning of this year, they look like they have all the pieces to contend. When they're firing on all cylinders, they're very impressive.
You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel, Illegal Curve Radio. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Get notified each and every time we go live so you don't miss any of our programming. Also, subscribe to the podcast while you're at it. Our guest from Sportsnet, you're going to see his mug on TV tonight, undoubtedly. Sean Reynolds joining us here on the program.
No, Sean, before I get my Jets related question, I have to, of course, give your new show a shout out. You and Ken Weeb are going to be doing a show every Friday. So we want our listeners, I linked to it in the papers this morning. I linked to it yesterday in the notes. So people are going to listen to the Kenny and Rennie show with you every Friday, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And I just want to get to two things quickly. Thanks for the plug. I smashed the subscribe button to your guys' show, and it's a good feeling. So all you out there, smash it because it feels great. The Kenny and Rennie show, we're trying something a little bit different here. We got a little bit of software that we wanted to play around with, and are going to use it to try and make sure that we're getting more Jets content out there, and trying to give a venue for Sportsnet people. We had Gary Galley on yesterday, Eric Engels, Ryan Leslie, just have a venue to hear people or have Jets fans hear the take of the Sportsnet personalities on the Jets more often, give a place for that to happen. It's funny, I wanted to touch on the Kenny and Rennie thing. I mean, I love your guys' name. It's great. It's one of those names that, it's undoubtedly hockey. We were trying to figure out a name here, and I've done some stuff in the past. We're trying to put something together, and we were kind of did a little playoff of the Kenny and Spenny thing. If you guys remember that Canadian show. But I hate the name Rennie. I hate it. One guy gave me that nickname, and no one else touched it, in a hockey dressing room years and years ago. So one guy called me Rennie. It's never been my nickname, but it's kind of the only thing we could find to flow. And all I've had is like people who actually know me texting me and being like, "Who's Rennie?" Like, I don't get it. Who's Rennie? You're not Rennie. You don't dare say you're Rennie. So it's one of those things where I'm wondering, am I going to end up at some point in my life being known as Rennie when that's never been my nickname? Like going from Ezzy to, I don't know, Damon or something like that. I don't know. It feels weird. It feels weird to hear it, but we're trying to make something work here.
Well, and I think it's great. I think it's always good to have, we've talked about this in the press box. I think it's good for there to be more voices, and for Jets fans to have a venue for them to hear people talking about this club, because you're right, with the loss of 1290, that was a big voice taken out of the community. And you and Ken and us and a lot of others are adding to that voice. So that's really good. I just want to give people a notification about your show every Friday, not every Friday at 9:00, right?
Well, it'll be every Friday. We don't know about the timing specifically because it'll depend on what's happening with the Jets schedule.
For sure.
That's the one thing that's tricky, especially with the condensed schedule. There's not really those specific days that are wide open. So
just do what we do, Sean. Just do what we do, Sean. Don't bend. 9:00 every time.
Well, he's got to negotiate with Weeb and Weeb's agents, and you know how big of a diva Kenny is. That it's a little difficult.
See, Drew, you get it. You get my plight. Yeah.
Wait till golf season starts.
Yeah, well,
that's true.
No Fridays then. Yeah, or you'll see him like he'll be putting down the phone, and you'll hear a ping in the background, and then pick up the phone again. Yeah.
But anyway, so Sean just wanted to talk about some Jets, of course, and the one thing that's interesting is Pierre-Luc Dubois was brought in as a center, and Paul Maurice has talked about they have time for this guy as a center, but clearly he has found a home on that left side of the first line. With it rolling right now, how likely, and Paul Maurice talked about he could make a change if it was rolling, he could make a change if it wasn't going, but how likely is it, do you think, that we see Pierre-Luc, if this Jets team continues to roll, 3 wins in a row, if they continue to do that against Montreal tonight, we don't know what they'll do against Vancouver, but how likely is it, do you think, that we see Pierre-Luc Dubois as a center sooner rather than later?
Oh, I don't know if I have an answer to that question. I think what we've been seeing from Paul Maurice this year is, we used to joke years ago about Paul Maurice having the line blender, and then he kind of put it away, and then definitely put it away when it came to those top lines, right? Like there wasn't a lot of change, and it was very, very staid. Some people would say it grew stale, but I think what we've seen this year is with all that depth, and there really is, it's almost like they've got, a top 7 essentially, and a third line that is starting to play into the conversation of it being a top 9, which means they almost have a top 10. And so it almost seems like there's that one extra guy, and that one extra guy has allowed them to kind of cycle guys in, use the hot hand, move guys around to try and get guys going. So I've really felt like there's been a lot of movement this year because of that. But the one thing that I do think is that Paul Maurice has an overarching plan of where he wants to go. And so when he tries something and it works, it's almost like he's like, yes, it works. But at the same time, he's like, damn it, it works. Because now I got to stick with that until it stops working. And I really think that that's kind of his plan going forward with this line, is he's going to roll with that line as long as they work. And then there's going to be like a game where it doesn't work. And he's going to be like, this is my moment to change this. And now I can start the Pierre-Luc Dubois back at center experiment. And it's going to drive some fans crazy, because they're going to be like, you can't give those guys 2 or 3 bad periods. You know, after all the good hockey they've played, you're going to tear them apart like that. But I do think there's an overarching plan. I don't believe for a second that we've seen the last of Kyle Connor with Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele this year. I think that that's just the love of his life that he can't help but go back to over and over again, Paul Maurice. I feel like it's going to go there. Pierre-Luc Dubois, I mean, in the end, he's the plan going forward with this team. And they hope long term he's the plan to be there at center. So it doesn't have to start tomorrow, but that's the long-term plan. And I think that he'll get to that plan as soon as he can.
Sean Rennie Reynolds is our guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're talking about the Winnipeg Jets, the Jets and the Habs. 9:00 puck drop tonight. Game you can watch, of course, on Sportsnet and listen to on CJOB. You know, Sean, Tucker Poolman out of the lineup on Thursday night, and you moved Josh Morrissey to play on his off wing. He goes to become a right side defenseman. Sami Niku was also playing on the right side. Pardon me, Sami Niku was playing on the left side, but I think it just sort of highlights the Jets' lack of depth on their right side of their defense right now. Is that an area of concern for you, that you think maybe Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to look to shore up, maybe acquire a depth right side defenseman for the instances where one of your right side D is not in the lineup?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to happen down the stretch here. I think the feeling with a lot of people is that, because of the quarantine and issues having to do with COVID, that people aren't going to be making trades. But what I think, first off, is I think the Jets are legit. I think they've got a legitimate chance at making some noise in the playoffs this year. And I think Kevin Cheveldayoff knows that. And I think, to your point, I mean, they've done a good job surviving it. They've done a good job playing full team defense to mask some of the issues they had on defense last year. But I think that if you're trying to make a Stanley Cup run, you want to have a defense that more resembles a championship caliber defense. So I do expect him to make moves down the stretch. And I think that will be the interesting part, is to see when those dominoes start to fall and how other teams are going to be handling that. I always think back to that move where, was it Brassard that Vegas made the move to keep him away from the Winnipeg Jets, and then they end up one-upping them and going and getting Stastny and getting the guy they needed anyway. But I always found it interesting that Vegas team, when they made that move, I think we were kind of like, Vegas, one, first, like, oh yeah, that's right, Vegas has a team, but two, like, who's Vegas and why are they trying to mess with us? And well, you saw why they tried to mess with them, because Vegas saw a path to the Stanley Cup final that they could be traveling, and very much saw the Winnipeg Jets as being the team that would be in their way. So I think the Jets have to take that mindset. I think they need to be looking around the league and seeing who those teams are that they feel they're going to be seeing in that Final Four, if they can get out of the North Division, and seeing what they're going to need to do to match up. And to your point, I do think they need to shore up their defense. And that's something I expect they will try to do before it's all said and done.
Shawnee, just switching to the forwards now, before we had you on, I was talking about, the Nate Thompson winning goal and just how nice of a play that was, Mason Appleton, just, finding him right there wide open. Right. Do you expect any changes tonight on the forward lines, just based on, the win, the 6-3 win, and the way those lines have been playing? I mean, can you see Paul Maurice possibly putting Jansen Harkins back in the lineup? And, over these next 3 games with the 2 back-to-back against Vancouver, is that maybe a situation where you could see a Jansen Harkins or Christian Vesalainen coming in more, in that back-to-back situation, as opposed to tonight versus Montreal?
Yeah, I think what I've seen from Paul Maurice this year is him really wanting to get Jansen Harkins in the lineup, and clearly that injury really created a lot of problems. And then when your team is playing well, that kind of takes over, right? So that, I think, is the overriding factor right now. Paul Maurice has said it a bunch of times this year. I mean, I think he always felt that way, but he seems to really be hammering home the message this year. The first decision we're going to make is the one that we think has the best ramifications for the Winnipeg Jets winning. And I do think that he's probably at that stage with this lineup that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it's one of those things for Christian Vesalainen and Jensen Harkins where you're on a really, really deep hockey team. And yeah, there's places in the lineup that we can get you in if it calls for it. And yes, there may even be players in this lineup that you are potentially ahead of, on a chart when it comes to like skill but they want a specific kind of thing. Clearly they want something from Trevor Lewis, and they've been going to him for that. Clearly he wants Nate Thompson in this lineup. His decisions have suggested that. So I don't see changes made for the sake of just getting those guys into the lineup. I think it would take either injury or failings to see Christian Vesalainen and Jensen Harkins back in the lineup.
So Sean, and the one thing I've been curious about, and we weren't certain, of course, until the Manitoba Moose got going, was how would they play their young guys? Paul Maurice in training camp said he doesn't want young guys languishing on the taxi squad. Those are his words. And I can tell you, because I tweeted it saying, Pascal Vincent will be happy to hear that because he'll want those young guys playing for him. I can't tell you how many people have tweeted that back at me now throughout the course of the season, because you've still got young guys languishing on the taxi squad. And to me, when the Moose, for example, are in Montreal and the Jets are in Winnipeg, you're not going to send guys because you just can't do it because of the COVID situation. So you can't really have any sort of movement. So at that point, you're reliant on your taxi squad. But I mean, how much longer if he's not going to play a guy like Christian Vesalainen? David Gustafsson to me is a no-brainer. I mean, again, my own conjecture. I would have to think that David Gustafsson will go down to the Moose once they come back from their road trip. I could be wrong. But do you think that's going to be an inevitability that guys like David Gustafsson and Christian Vesalainen, especially when there's overlap, right? Especially when the teams are in the same city, are going to be down playing minutes with the Moose? Because we're seeing the benefit with all of these young players right now playing with Manitoba. Billy Heinola, Cole Perfetti. I mean, he's not really a Jets aspect. Dylan Sandberg. So you have all those young guys. But I know you have to, and Pascal Vincent would acknowledge it, I know you have to think about the Jets. That's your number one focus. You have to think about winning with the team. Development is important, but Paul Maurice's focus has to be on winning. But how likely is it, do you think, that we see some of these young guys go play with the Moose if they're just not getting into that Jets lineup?
Yeah, I think you did a really good job of explaining the situation there. I think you touched on it. I mean, I think in times where there's overlap, you may see that happen. And it's true. At the beginning of the season, Paul Maurice had said, like, in an ideal world, you don't want really skilled young guys who you want getting their reps, and you don't want them sitting on the taxi squad. Problem is, it's far from a perfect world this year. And you touched on it, and I touched on it right before you asked the question. The main thing that the Winnipeg Jets are looking to this year is we need to do what's best for the Winnipeg Jets. And it's not necessarily going to be the best thing for those prospects. I mean, you've got Eric Comrie on the show today, right? I've talked with Ken Wiebe about, I like to look into the kind of the human side of the game. And I think for Eric Comrie, he knows really good people here, great organization for him to be a part of. But part of this, I think, has to be tough for a guy who's now been claimed and whose job is essentially going to be to stay on that taxi squad and not have the opportunity to develop. So he's going to look down and he's going to see Michael Burden getting his reps and, being a guy who the organization is developing. And essentially his best case scenario is likely going to be an injury, sorry, I shouldn't even call it that, a best case scenario. But when you're waiting in the wings, it's an injury that's going to get him some playing time or some reps. And I just think that, if you're a hockey player and you're chasing your dream, there's going to be players on that taxi squad this year who are kind of caught in limbo, and they're not getting the playing time that they want to be getting. And they're a step away from their dream, but that step is only going to happen if something bad happens with the team. And so there's going to be a lot of examples of that this year, and it's an imperfect world. And David Gustafsson is a guy who, if you need him, can help at the NHL level.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, he's on that taxi squad and ready to go, because the Winnipeg Jets are a team that has potential to do something special this year. And you want to make sure that you have all bases covered. Is it ideal for his development? No. And that's going to be some of the trade-off this year, and making sure you have the best possible roster. Is it's not going to be ideal development for some of the players who are your best potential prospects.
Sean Reynolds is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Sean covers the Winnipeg Jets for Sportsnet. You can watch him tonight, the Jets and the Canadiens, 9 o'clock puck drop on CBC and, of course, on Sportsnet. Sean, one last question for you. I asked Paul Maurice about this, I believe it was last Sunday after the win in Vancouver, where, again, we saw another opportunity for Neil Pionk to unleash that howitzer from the blue line that I think none of us necessarily expected or knew that he had to the capabilities that it appears to be this season. You know, could you foresee the Jets, or would you suggest that the Jets would be better off with Pionk manning the point on that first power play unit? Or do you like the current setup with Morrissey, who, has a weaker shot, still a good shot, but a weaker shot than that Pionk possesses?
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to do that, you'd have to switch the structure of the power play, right? Like Pionk was on it last year because the primary goal was to get the puck over to Patrick Laine for the one-timer. Well, Mark Scheifele has moved over to that side and is kind of more playing. I mean, we've seen him shoot, and he's going to be more capable of shooting than Blake Wheeler was in that half-wall spot. But he's still kind of quarterbacking the way that Blake Wheeler did, although Blake Wheeler now quarterbacks from the back in a way that Kyle Connor didn't, when it was the mirror opposite from last year. So, I mean, if you were going to switch those two, you'd have to switch sides, and maybe you go back to Blake Wheeler on the other half wall. So there could be interest in that happening. But right now it seems like Kyle Connor is the new Patrick Laine in terms of one-timers, and shows that he's got that capability of getting it over. And I do think that Josh Morrissey is better at that misdirection and then sending the pass over that catches everybody off guard and leads to that big shot. The other thing I think Josh Morrissey does really well is he doesn't have that shot that Neil Pionk has. But I think he's really good in putting it in spots where it can be tipped. And I don't think we've seen it pay off that much yet on the power play. But I think that's simply because their other options have been so good that that's an option they haven't had to go to. If they get to a place where other teams figure out their structure and their power play and start shutting down Kyle Connor as an option, and that pass from Scheifele down to Wheeler and then up to Stastny, shutting that stuff down, I do see Josh Morrissey taking that shot more often, and I see it working because I think he's really good at shooting to spots that allow for redirects. And I think the Jets have been a really good team at getting into those spots. But to your point about Neil Pionk's shot, I mean, imagine if he was like, you said it, it seems like this year he's found an extra gear for that shot that he didn't have. Imagine if he'd had that shot last year, because the Jets power play seemed to have grown stale last year because other teams just wouldn't let the puck go to Laine and entirely shut that option down. But by doing that, they left Pionk all alone, and he just didn't really seem to take that shot that often. Feels like if he would have had the shot he has this year last year, that it would have been a very different story on that power play.
Things are going well for the Winnipeg Jets. They'll look to keep it going later on tonight. As we mentioned, 9 o'clock puck drop against the Montreal Canadiens. The rematch, Sean Reynolds will be covering it for our friends at Sportsnet and CBC. Stay tuned for that game later tonight. Sean, appreciate it. We'll let you get your face on for your TV performance later on. Thanks for joining us, and I'd say you hit it out of the ballpark in your debut appearance here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Well, I want to thank you guys for having me on and making a little bit of a dream come true for me. I've wanted to be here for a long time, guys.
Take care, Sean. Appreciate it.
Sean.
See you later tonight, buddy. Bye. There he goes, Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Still to come on the show in about 15 minutes time, we're going to be joined by Eric Comrie, Winnipeg Jets goaltender. Looking forward to bringing Eric onto the program, of course. This segment of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, we're going to talk about the Jets power play. This segment is brought to you by Bernstein's Deli, official deli of Illegal Curve Hockey and home of the Illegal Curve Sandwich. Located in the Cordon Village Mall, Bernstein's Deli has been Winnipeg's deli destination for over 30 years. For more information, find them on Facebook or at bernsteinsdeli.com bernsteinsdeli.com. Whatever you need, however you need it, Bernstein's Deli is there for you. Pick up, delivery, curbside, whatever you need during these COVID times, Bernstein's Deli is there to help you out. For more information, bernsteinsdeli.com. So that same question, I deliberately asked it for Sean at the end of the interview there because it segues nicely into this segment about the Jets power play, gentlemen. Let me ask you guys your thoughts on that. Sean articulated very well why Pionk on the number one power play might not work given the current setup, and it would sort of take a complete restructuring. Are you okay with how it's currently operating? Obviously, the Jets power play certainly has been a strong point for the team. I believe it is 7th overall in the month of February, 26.7 success rate. Is this a case of it ain't broke, don't fix it? And Neil Pionk on power play unit number 2 is certainly a strong asset there?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think there's that much of a difference, to be honest with you, right? Like Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk can both play that position at a very high level, right? Like they're both excellent players. And, I think this Jets power play, you mentioned Drew 7th in the month of February, and I believe it's 13th overall. And I think it can be much better. And I think, when Patrick Laine was traded, that's almost what everybody thought of right away, right? Like, well, Laine is so good on the power play, and he is, and he's continued to excel for the Columbus Blue Jackets. But Mark Scheifele, I think, was underrated in his ability to have the same impact in that position. Obviously, Scheifele's shot is not as good as Laine's. Nobody's really is, except for maybe, a couple of players, with one of them maybe being Alex Ovechkin. But the Jets have so many different weapons, and I think Paul Stastny has really added a nice element, and I believe he was first, Dave, if I'm not mistaken, in power play ice time last game versus the Montreal Canadiens. And I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy that can obviously give you a different type of element, more of a net front presence, but also a guy that's got good hands and a pretty underrated shot. So I think oftentimes with PP1, everyone likes to fixate a little bit on who's playing the point. I think the Jets are one of those teams that could easily put 5 forwards out there, Dave. I've talked about many times how I'd like to see Nikolai Ehlers kind of in that spot, manning the point. He's a guy that just with his skating ability alone, I think can cause confusion for the opposing team. So no, Drew, Josh Morrissey, I realize that, he's kind of flip-flopped with Pionk there, and we'll probably see, the Pionky-Tonk man, flip-flop with him again and be on the Jets' first power play. But the power play, as far as I'm concerned, I'd probably give it a B+. Like, I don't know if I would give it necessarily an A, but it has been something where, it's not hurting the Jets. And I think last year at times, in the first half of the season especially, or in the first third of the season, it wasn't maybe as sharp as it was in previous years. So I think this power play, can be even better. And at this point, at 5-on-5, we know that, the Jets are, struggling at times to create goals, not so much as of late. So the power play to me is the least of my concerns on this team.
It's not a concern, certainly. And then, I was curious about it because, and so I asked, as I mentioned, Paul Maurice on Sunday after the game against Vancouver, and he said, it's an asset for the team, that second power play unit. Let's say on average, they get 30 to 40 seconds of a 2-minute power play. And sometimes it's even less than that. He says it's such an asset for them to be able to gain the zone very quickly, which they can with Nikolai Ehlers, the zone entry machine himself coming into the zone, setting it up. And then, having Pionk be able to unleash that shot, a hard shot, and unleash it quickly without it needing a lot of time to move around the diamond or move around the umbrella, because they don't have the luxury of time being that second power play unit. That first unit gets to be a little bit, I'm going to say fancier for lack of a better word, in that they can move it around and they can look for the perfect passing play. That second unit has to get the zone set up and start firing at opposing goalies pretty quickly. And with Pionk on the point for that, that sort of allows them to do so, Dave.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're 100% right. And I think that's one of the things we talked about was that idea of balance, right? Because a lot of times we would see almost a full 2 minutes of that first PP1 and the second power play unit just wasn't getting a significant portion of time. So, I mean, obviously working towards when you have, like, as he said, guys who could easily be on your first power play unit, on your second power play unit, that's such a luxury that quite a few teams wouldn't necessarily possess. And so, I mean, I think it's just, it's something we've talked about, that theme with with this team overall, not specific to the power play, is that idea of balance, right? That idea of having, like Scheifele not play 26 minutes a game because it's just going to burn him out. Well, I mean, again, you're always going to be able to find minutes for guys anyways, right? Because we know that Kopp and Lowry are always going to find minutes on the penalty kill. So you can get them Mason Appleton on the penalty kill. So even if they're not, the third line isn't rolling 5-on-5, we know that they're going to get their opportunity because those are your PK specialists. And while the Jets haven't been heavily, I don't know, I can't remember where they rank in terms of penalties. We know that that's allowing those guys to pick up minutes. Those are hard minutes. They're not easy minutes, of course. But I think it's just one of those questions of balance, Drew. And I think, you've got that first power play unit, and maybe they need to have, and again, it's hard to criticize a team that, like you said, is seventh in the month of February, but it's almost like sometimes there's that luxury of time, and maybe there needs to be a little more alacrity in their step, in their setup. But I mean, again, it's very difficult to criticize when you're having success.
Yeah, I like that word alacrity, first of all, Manuk. And, I would point out to the Jets power play and say what I like most about it, and this isn't necessarily a change from last year, but it's the diversity in, the two power play units that Paul Maurice is able to put out. And the fact that, maybe without Patrick Laine in the lineup, there's not as much of a focus. You're not trying to, revolve your power play around that big shot, which would make sense for any team to do because he's got the best shot in the league and he scored 20 power play goals a few years back, right? But when you talk about, Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler and Paul Stastny, Kyle Connor, these guys can dish the puck just as well as they can shoot it, right? And Blake Wheeler, is not a guy, that you expect to score a lot of goals, on the power play. You're expecting to set them up, but he's shown that he can also, he's got a pretty decent shot, right? With, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor leading the way there. We talked about, Neil Pionk's, howitzer. So I think, you're spreading the wealth a little bit there, right? By putting Neil Pionk on that second power play unit. And the fact that Nikolai Ehlers is on the second power play unit is pretty ridiculous, if you ask me, because he's arguably the most skilled player on the team. So that's what I like about the Jets power play. You can really, it's like moving, pieces around on a chessboard, really. There's so much talent. It's not like if one player is out of the lineup or two players are out of the lineup, it doesn't really matter. Like in previous years, you'd say, well, Laine's not in the game tonight, the Jets power play is really going to struggle. That's not the case anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these are all very good problems to have, especially with a power play that, if you had told people at the beginning of the year that the Jets power play was going to be without Patrick Laine, if that trade was going to be made and Laine wasn't going to be on the power play, you would have thought that Jets power play was going to be a problem for the team. Obviously, they still have a lot of talent, but you thought it would maybe take a step back. In fact, it's ahead of where it was last year. And if I recall in the offseason, maybe the preseason, training camp time, we talked about a Travis Yost article, and he talked about sort of the diminishing returns from the Jets power play and how that had impacted the team for the last couple of seasons. Well, I mean, right now, that certainly hasn't been the case. Certainly through the month of February, top 10 in the league. Overall, the entire season still in the top half of the league. So when you get that quality power play from both units, and it's only going to get better, I believe. I mean, Dubois is just sort of finding his feet on that Jets second power play unit. So, when your first power play unit has the talent that it has, and we know the talent, and then the second power play unit has Ehlers, who's got a great shot and as I mentioned, a zone entry machine. And then it's got Dubois, who we know has fantastic vision. And then it's got Neil Pionk, and the best weapon the Jets have had from the point since Byfuglien was on the team. It's an array of riches for Jets head coach Paul Maurice, really.
Yeah, it's all about balance to me, right? And there are some other guys that I wouldn't mind seeing on the power play as well. Like, Mason Appleton is a guy, that I seem to have taken over the president of the Mason Appleton fan club, but I don't care. I mean, he's having an awesome year, and he deserves, to be mentioned in terms of, the Jets top players now. And he's a staple of the top nine. And he's a guy that I think has shown us, we've seen obviously guys, the offensive prowess at the American Hockey League level and, at the collegiate level in the NCAA. But I think you're seeing that, he's got good hands and he's got good vision. So he's a guy that, I wonder if we start seeing him a little bit more on the second power play unit, but it's tough, right? Because Andrew Kopp is a guy, that gets some power play time as well. We talked about some of the other players on the second power play unit. Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy that you could easily put on that first power play unit, but I like, what he can offer in terms of a net front presence, and also a guy that you have to respect his shot as well. He's got a very good shot. Dave knows that from, his time with Columbus. So I think, right now, that's what stands out to me about this Jets power play. When the first power play unit's off the ice, I don't think the opposing team is saying, oh, well, we don't have to worry about the second power play unit when you see, Nick Ehlers and Neil Pionk step over the boards.
Well, and, sorry, Dave, I'm interrupting you a bit, but, what was so impressive, you remember, so you go back to Thursday night when it's a tie game, the Jets get those couple of power plays in the third period. They're not able to capitalize on them. And you're thinking, okay, well, usually what happens is, there's a bit of a sag, or the Canadiens are feeling good about themselves. And I talked to Dubois about this on Thursday night. The Jets immediately come back after not capitalizing on those power play opportunities. And almost on the next shift after the penalty is finished, they score goals. And, this team seems to be feeding off of itself energy-wise right now. And you can see the level of confidence that they're playing with, and how almost when you're playing at that level, everything seems to go well. You got, Andrew Kopp knocking down that terrible giveaway attempt. But, to have the eye-hand coordination to knock it down, end up on your stick, fire the shot, get the rebound, get it over to Dubois into the empty net. Just things are clicking right now for this team in a way that we really haven't seen since the run to the Western Conference Final a few years ago. This team is just playing right now with a great degree of confidence, Dave.
Well, I mean, and again, I think it comes down to that idea of, we're like, it seems like an antiquated notion. I'm not sure why we still reference top six, bottom six, because what the Jets seem to be establishing, at least, is a top nine that is as good as any, really. And I think, do they have their deficiencies? They do. I mean, they're not necessarily defensive stalwarts, all of them. But I mean, we were talking about, I think Mike McIntyre said Mark Scheifele was number one in takeaways in the NHL or something like that. So, I mean, they're doing a lot of things right. And I think that is the key for this team, right? We've always talked about, it's easy to load up your top line and then have, the other team gets paid too, right? And the other team has good players. I don't care if they're the worst team in the NHL, they've got good players on them, and they're going to be able to effectively, eliminate one. But when you have the first line that can do damage, the second line that can do damage, and now the third line, that to me is where the significance of your team. And that's, I think, and I don't remember the exact minutes played per game for the game, against Montreal, but I think it was fairly even across that board with that top nine. So again, I think that to me will be the key moving forward. I mean, again, I think the fourth line is going to be a plug and play. I suspect you'll see guys come in and out from the taxi squad because you've got older players, because you may want to give them rest because of situations, or again, could because of injury. But I don't expect that fourth line to start taking up big minutes. I don't think it'll be truly balanced. I think Paul Maurice will still continue to roll. I just think that, again, now you're rolling three deep. And to me, that is going to be the key to the strength of this Jets team.
No question. Very well said there, Dave. Going back to before we had Sean on and the talk about the need for a right side defenseman, Brandon Montour is obviously the guy who came to my mind as well, because we know he's on the block. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. We're going to hold that thought. We'll get back to Montour in a couple of moments. Eric Comrie, Winnipeg Jets goaltender, is set to join us here in a minute as he's joining us from his ongoing quarantine here in Winnipeg, getting his camera all set up, getting his mic ready as well. Eric Comrie, Winnipeg Jets goaltender, welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Eric, good morning, and thanks for joining us. You're on mute, Eric. We'll get
now. I'm not on mute anymore.
No, you're not on mute anymore.
Sorry about that.
All good, Eric.
I wish we could put Drew on mute, Eric.
Yeah, you could put me on mute after. Eric, a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Obviously, still in quarantine, and we'll talk about that. But I first want to, when you hear Winnipeg Jets goaltender Eric Comrie, does that sound better, or does it sound any different than when you said Detroit Red Wings goaltender Eric Comrie or New Jersey Devils goaltender Eric Comrie? Because it's sort of like winter and Winnipeg. It just goes together. Eric Comrie and Jets goaltender. It just sounds like it goes well together.
That's funny. I mean, I've been back here a lot, and I love my time here. It's been great every time I come back. It's funny because I've been around the league a lot, but I always end up coming back.
Eric, you were with the New Jersey Devils organization for, I believe it was just over a month, but what was it like, to pick up that win in that game? Because as Drew mentioned, as you talked about last year, you were a member of, 3 different organizations, but, how important was that for you, to get that win in the game for the Devils, even though you were only with them for that short period of time?
No, for sure. I think it was really important. I mean, anytime you go to a team, your job is to win hockey games. And that's what they brought me in to do, is to win a hockey game when my time came. And I was happy to be able to do that and help them get the win. And I mean, I had a lot of fun in New Jersey, had a lot of support there with the goalie coach there, and the management there, and the coaches are awesome there. And the team's a really young, fun team to play for. And I was really happy with my time there, and just, it was a big win for the team.
Eric, you obviously had the benefit of working with Rick St. Croix with the Manitoba Moose and Wade Flaherty with the Jets, but what benefit can you get as a player learning from different goaltenders? There's 2 schools of thought, I would imagine. One is that it could cause confusion because you've got different voices, but there's also the opportunity to pick up different tips that maybe you haven't thought of. So what did you learn? What did you see a benefit learning from, in Arizona, in Detroit, and now in New Jersey?
Yes, I would say so, for sure. There's always a benefit in learning other places, but like you said, it can become confusing. Like when I was in Arizona, they wanted me to play deep, and then I went to Detroit, they wanted me to play far out. Like it's a learning process every time you go there, so it takes time to adjust. Like when I went to Detroit, they wanted me to narrow my stance. When I went to New Jersey, Rogie said, "Go out there and play. You're here for a reason." He didn't tell me anything to do. He just said, "Go out there, play. Don't think. Go play." And sometimes I fall into the thing where I start thinking too much. And he was one of the first goalie coaches I ever had, who's pretty much just told me, "Hey, you're here because we liked you. We've seen you play the American League a lot of games. You post unbelievable numbers in the American League, and there's a reason." He goes, "You haven't been as successful in the NHL level, and there's a reason for this." He goes, "I think it's just you've been put a lot of pressure on yourself, and you've tried to think your way through the game." He goes, "I want you to come here and don't think at all. Just go play. Play like it's an American League game, and just play. And that's what I did in New Jersey.
Eric Comrie is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Eric, of course, is a goaltender for the Winnipeg Jets. He's still in quarantine, is soon to be out of quarantine, and we'll talk about that over the course of this interview. Eric, sort of piggybacking on that comment, you talked about how in Detroit they wanted you to play a certain style and maybe change your game. Is having organizational philosophies about how individual goaltenders should play almost detrimental to the goaltenders, as opposed to sort of taking a goalie, seeing what he does best, and just making him the best goalie possible, as opposed to trying to revamp how they've been successful thus far?
That's actually a good question, because I mean, there has to be some part of teaching. I mean, when you're a young guy coming to the league, you have to get taught. You have to get taught how to play the pro game, because the pro game is different than a junior game or a college game. So you have to learn it. I mean, when I came to even to St. John's, my first goalie coach there was Dusty Emu. I mean, I had to learn how to play the pro game. And then when I went to Manitoba, I had Rick St. Croix, and he taught me how to play the pro game. It's different. It's different than playing a junior game. So you have to have some aspect of teaching, but you have to work with the goaltender's skills to achieve kind of the style you want him to play. You can't just change his style. You have to work with him and to kind of mold him to where you want him to get to.
Eric, Drew just mentioned, you're in quarantine and you're going to be out of quarantine, thank God, very soon. But, how have you been, keeping yourself busy? How have you been, keeping yourself in shape? Like, you're a pro athlete, right? So you gotta still get your workouts in. So, what's it like, and how much are you looking forward to finally getting out of quarantine and joining the boys?
So this is going to be a strange stat. This is my 28th day. As soon as I get out of quarantine, it'll be my 28th day of quarantine in 34 days. Because was in New Jersey right before I got put on waivers. We had a 2-week shutdown, and my girlfriend got COVID, so I was in a close contact quarantine. So I actually couldn't leave my hotel room or apartment for 2 weeks. So I've been in. So going to the day I get back, it's going to be a really exciting day to get back on the ice, because there's been about 3 skates in the last 30 something days. So it'll be nice.
And, Eric, you were drafted by the Jets organization. You have so many records for the Manitoba Moose. So what was it like? I mean, there was an opportunity in New Jersey, but what is it like in terms of a comfort for you being able to come back here? And who was the first person you heard from when you got claimed back by the Winnipeg Jets?
First person that texted me was definitely Josh Morrissey. He's a good buddy of mine. We're the same age. We've played together for a number of tournaments, and we're good buddies. I mean, Scheisse was right away. A couple guys from the Moose, Nelson Noje, just a bunch of guys here, and it's always been a fun place for me to come back to, and I really enjoy all the guys here. They're just such great guys, such great teammates, and I mean, they're a reason why they're usually a winning hockey team, because it's a good group.
Eric Comrie is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. You can also, of course, make sure you hit the subscribe button and subscribe to the podcast in case you missed any of the show or any of this interview. Eric, it's well known, the frequent flyer miles you've put on, in the last number of years of your career. How do you think that's affected your development, moving from Winnipeg to Arizona to Detroit to New Jersey to Winnipeg and onwards and onwards and onwards? How do you think that's impacted your development as a goaltender, as a professional hockey goaltender?
I've added a few more jerseys to my workout room, which is nice. But I mean, I don't know if it's I think it's probably helped. If anything, you get different experiences, different places you go in. I've been lucky enough to everywhere I've gone. Except for Arizona, I didn't play an NHL game there. But anytime you get an NHL game in, it's a dream come true to step on that ice. I mean, that's what I want. It's what I've trained my whole life to do, is step on that NHL ice surface. And I'm just so happy that everywhere I've gone, I've gotten a good opportunity, and it's been exciting for myself. And I think that's helping my development, getting that experience and just meeting new guys and practicing with different NHL level players. And that's what you want. That's what you need to get better at the end of the day.
Eric, the expectation is that, you're going to be part of the taxi squad, which is obviously, a unique situation. We're not expecting that to be something that continues just because of, the expectation that the COVID pandemic is eventually going to improve. But what are your personal expectations? Because that's a unfamiliar position for yourself. You're used to, playing in games, and obviously, we hope that you are going to get into games, but obviously, there is the chance that that won't happen for a while. So kind of what's your mindset right now, knowing that it's going to be a little different than in previous years for yourself?
No, it's definitely a strange scenario. I mean, it was a whole strange scenario the whole year with the third goalie situation. I'm not sure if they should have had just a third goalie roster spot, because the amount of movement with third goalies this year has been kind of crazy, and I think it's affected some of the players. I mean, I know my good buddy Troy Grosnick was bounced around a lot. There's been a couple of guys that have been going everywhere. And for myself, I mean, it worked out well for myself. So I got an NHL game in. I mean, that's always exciting to go down there and play a game. I'd never would turn it back for anything else, because I got to play a game, and that's exciting for myself. But going into this year, I wasn't sure how many games I'd actually play, just because the whole, like what you said about the taxi squad, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know the dynamics if you're going to get a game in or not, if they're going to send you down to the Moose to get a couple of conditioning games in. Because, I mean, I want Helly and Brossoit to play as good as they can to make the team win. That's at the end of the day, our goal is all the same, is to win a Stanley Cup with the team, NHL team you're on. That's the goal for any player in this organization, is to get the Jets to win the Stanley Cup. And so you never want to see anyone get injured or anything like that. So you want to keep them playing. So it's, at the end of the day, you just have to stay ready the best you can. And I was super excited to get that game in Jersey, because I wasn't sure going this year if I was going to play at all.
Eric, one of the things that I guess, that idea of comfort is if you do happen to get into a game, and we don't know, like you said, you hope it doesn't, because that generally means there's obviously an injury situation. But how big of a benefit, again, will it be to you to know that this team? I mean, these are guys that you've essentially grown up with. And there's, and we've seen so many of the guys from the Moose graduate. And to your point, all these guys because you've spent years and years with them on the road. So how much, and I know you've played games for the Jets obviously previously, but again, coming back into a comfortable situation, a situation where you're not the new guy. You're not like, hey, I have to introduce you to the equipment managers. You know all these guys. And to me, I wonder how much from a psychological, because I never talked to you at the end of I talked to you with the Moose, but I mean, in the sense that was one thing I was always curious about, because you went, I chronicled it, Arizona, Detroit, Winnipeg, Manitoba, it was a lot, and it's a lot mentally for one person to go through. And people just act like, oh, you're a pro athlete, deal with it. But you're at the end of the day, you're still a person, and you have to you still have to deal with that. So I wonder how much that plays in for you.
No, for sure. It's, I'm pretty good at making friends, so it's pretty easy for me. But it's hard for even like I have my girlfriend, my dog. It's hard for that. Like it's hard for them to. She has to meet new friends, and she's not around them all the time. So it's harder for her. We're stuck inside hotel rooms with my dog and her, and it's not always the most fun thing for. But at the end of the day, it is part of the job. It's something that we have to do, and I understand that, and it's something that I've probably been more accustomed to than other people. And I've always been good at making friends, so that's the easiest thing for me is just go there and say, okay, I'm gonna meet some new guys, and I mean, it's not bad. But like you said, coming back here, and if I have to play a game here, I think knowing the guys would be a huge help, just because we have the good communication, even defense handles, some of that would be a lot easier. And I think even playing the game in New Jersey would help me. I mean, just extra experience, a little bit of stuff here, and just help me play. If I have to get into a game, I'd have to know that I'll be ready.
Eric Comrie's our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also subscribe to the podcast in case you missed any of this great interview. Eric, you obviously got a win with the Devils earlier this year. It'd been your first NHL win in a couple of seasons. How does that win sort of, does it feel different after you go a couple of years without getting an NHL victory?
Yes, for sure. it's relieving. It's relieving. I mean, it's like, it's hard to explain. It's you start to not doubt yourself, but you start to like say, oh my goodness, can I play well enough at this level? Can I do this? Because you start to question yourself. Okay, I've been good enough in the American League last couple of years. I've put up good numbers, and usually those numbers that I've put up usually translates to NHL success. So you wonder like why isn't it working as well? So you start to doubt yourself a little bit. You have to just almost let go and just let the game take care of itself. And I think that's what I tried to do. I just try to go out there and just be the best Eric Comrie I can be and not try and put as much pressure on myself. And it was relieving to get that win.
Do you work with a sports psychologist?
Go ahead, Drew.
Sorry, Ezzy, do you work with a sports psychologist on a regular basis to sort of overcome some of those doubts?
No, I don't think I actually haven't. I've read a lot of books about that stuff and things like that, but I haven't actually worked with a sports psychologist. I mean, I've looked at it in the past, but I've always been a pretty confident person. It just, you don't get a lot of chances at the NHL level, if you know what I mean. Like you get I've been very fortunate to get as many chances I have, and usually you don't get a lot of chances, and it's about taking care of business when you get those chances. And it's, I've been lucky enough to get enough opportunities, and my last one went pretty well. So hopefully I can get another opportunity in the future.
I know, Eric, there are a lot of Jets and Moose fans that didn't doubt you. And I know all of us, from our personal Twitter accounts and Illegal Curve Twitter accounts, we were all super happy that you got that win for the Devils. And we were secretly hoping that you were going to come back. And it eventually did happen. So just wanted to get that in there. But, wanted to ask you, I believe you've been back for just over a week and a half here in Winnipeg. And I wanted to kind of ask you, what it's like to watch Jets games. Like you're in quarantine, but when you're like watching the Jets Habs game and the Jets go down 2-0, and then they come back and Nate Thompson scores the winner, Blake Wheeler ties that game up. Like, are you just going nuts in your condo or house, or like what's a Jets game day for you like in this kind of unique situation?
So it's actually that's a weird question, because it's I'm watching the game and I'm excited for the team, but there's other part of me going, oh, I really want to be there. It's making me sad every time. So it's like, yes, let's go. And then I'm like, no, I want to be there. I'm really sad. And then I'm like, yes, they won. I'm like, oh, I really wish I was there to see the guys. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like, I'm so happy. I'm excited for the team. And then I'm like, oh, I really want to be there. I wish I could be there. Now I'm a little bit sad. So it's kind of like a give and take kind of thing.
Eric, you talked about, having a lot of new jerseys for your gym. Are you a collector? Are you a kind of guy who, after that game in New Jersey, do they give you the game puck? Do they give you the jersey? I saw the helmet you had designed for your stint in New Jersey. Are you the kind of player who keeps those types of mementos?
I haven't been a huge collector. I have my first Win jersey, my first Win puck, first Win stick. But I haven't really collected a ton of stuff. I still need to get my Detroit jersey, because it's kind of a cool jersey to have. I mean, original 6 teams kind of cool. I have a lot of Jets jerseys because I've been here for so long, and it holds a special place in my heart. And I want to make sure I get my New Jersey jersey. It's kind of a tongue twister. And then, my mask. So that mask I have, I love, because I was a huge Martin Brodeur fan growing up. He was my favorite goalie. I used to cut my hair like him. It was like everything Martin Brodeur was me. But then the mask I had is actually just a wrap. It's actually my Jets mask, just wrapped with stuff. So I'm like, okay, so they're going to have to peel that off. So I'm like, I'm really trying to figure out who I'm going to get to paint my mask to replicate that, because I really want to put that in my basement, because that's kind of a cool thing for me to have, like one of my idols growing up on my mask. It's kind of like a special thing for me.
Eric Comrie, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Eric, of course, a Winnipeg Jets goaltender, soon to finish up his quarantine. What's been keeping you busy in quarantine? I guess it's sort of a two-part question. How do you keep yourself fit? Do you speak to Wade Flaherty and sort of have a routine that keeps you limber and keeps you fit during this quarantine? And then, on the maybe TV side of things, what are you watching to keep yourself entertained as you're stuck inside for a while?
Oh, well, for myself, I mean, the team gave me some weight, so I've been lifting a lot of weight here. I've been doing a little bit of cardio stuff, just to try and stay in shape. And I actually have this system called Sense Arena. It's like a VR system. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before. It's pretty cool. It's for goalie training. It's kind of, they've given it to a bunch of pros, and I thought this year would be a great year for me to maybe take a look at this, because I mean, with the quarantine stuff, even in the summer, there wasn't a lot of ice going around. So I got the system, and I've been loving it. It's been great. I mean, for my first quarantine in Winnipeg, I used it a lot, and I felt a big difference. I thought it really helped me. So I've been using that quite a bit and working out, stay in shape, and watching a lot of golf and watching WGC. Oh yeah. Every tournament. Big golf watcher. Yeah.
Are you a golf? Do you play in the off season? Is that
Yes.
your sport in the off season?
I will play 5-6 days a week usually.
Oh,
and
wow.
I practice a ton.
I have
what's
the handicap?
I started playing 5 years ago. I went from a 20.3 index to I am now like a 5.5, and I shoot around like 74, 75.
You're a good golfer then. No,
so
remind me not to play for money with you.
So I've worked a lot at my game. I work a lot. I mean, I have a little putting mat set up here. I have little foam balls I hit against a little thing. So it's something that I take a lot of pride in. I really enjoy. It's actually helped get my mind off hockey and just enjoy something.
Golf is the ultimate individual sport. Obviously it's you and the ball, and there's nobody else that really impacts the game. Can you sort of see parallels between that and being a goaltender, and that you're almost sort of, obviously you have your teammates, but you're the last line of defense there. And, when somebody's bearing down on you one-on-one, it's almost like you're on the golf course, and that you're solely responsible for the outcome in this hole or in this play in hockey.
No, for sure. I mean, 100%. I mean, it's a lot of thinking, just like hockey. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of thinking. So to clear your mind before every shot, just like the same way in hockey, you have to clear your mind before every shot and just take it one shot at a time, and just whatever happens, you have to accept the result and move on to the next one. And I think it's a very parallel. But I mean, I also play a lot of team golf, and that's even more fun than individual golf, because you got a little partner. Myself and Josh Morrissey are a good team. I wouldn't play against us, by the way.
Okay, there you go.
I see the golf clubs behind you, so I'm like, okay, anytime you want to go, I'll take you and your buddy.
Hold on, are we going to set up the first ever Illegal Curve Texas Scramble with Eric Comrie and John?
I think we should.
As soon as the weather turns for the better, and then now that you'll be out of quarantine, absolutely, it would be our pleasure, Eric. I mean, you guys would school us. And
if you want to play with three terrible golfers, then that's what you're going to get by playing with us.
Well, I don't know. You could get a hot day. Maybe it's your home course. A lot of different things play to it.
If there's a hot day, we're more likely to just tip a few more beers back than really have that translate. In terms
you're going to see a lot of grandpa swings.
Yeah. Eric Comrie, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. I know that the quarantine is obviously rapidly coming to an end. We look forward to seeing you on the ice with your Winnipeg Jets teammates. All the best in the next couple of days, and all the best going forward this season. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Awesome. Thank you. I got a question though. Has Dave always been a Dodgers fan, or is this first year Dodger fan?
No. This is now, Eric. Just I know you're an LA guy, so I know
I'm in LA, but I'm a Cubs fan. I'm a Cubs fan though.
Well, I was going to say I don't think you're a Dodgers fan if I recall correctly, but no, I'm just a pure hat guy, and I got yelled at last week because I'm actually a Jays fan. But I was wearing a Jays hat last week, and someone said, "Do you have to be talking about the Winnipeg Jets wearing a Jays hat?" And so I got in trouble, and I thought, okay, well, I'll switch it up. So I've got an extensive hat collection. So today,
you got in trouble. You got in trouble again for being a Dodgers fan after winning a championship.
Yes, exactly. So this is an older hat, so I've had it for a long time. So it's not a championship. I'm following along.
Okay.
We want to see Dave take the hat off, let the gray hair, let it breathe, Dave. Embrace the gray, buddy. That's what we're telling you.
I don't think so.
Eric, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Eric.
tonight's game. All the best to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. You guys have a great day.
You too, Eric Comrie. There he goes,
Bye.
Winnipeg Jets goaltender. That was just fantastic. Eric Comrie joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Eric's appearance on the program is brought to you by our friends at Zappia Group Realty, Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty, official realtors of Illegal Curve Hockey. When 95% of your clients come via referral, it shows your commitment to honesty, integrity, and a total dedication to client satisfaction. If you want to sell your house for more in less time, come shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia online at zappiagroup.com. Dave, given your time with the Moose and the time you spend covering the Moose, you're more familiar with Eric than I am or than Ezzy is. What a great interview. What a guy who's really got his head on his shoulders the right way and approaches odd situations like this season has been with the right attitude.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I think I joked with him previously about how he needs to write a book about his travels from last season, because again, how often do you see that where a guy goes, and again, if you guys remember when he was with Detroit and they put him on waivers, there was that big uncertainty, what would happen with the Jets and would the Jets be allowed to claim him and send him down and all this stuff. So, and a lot of people didn't know the answer. And so Eric has put up with a lot, and he's got to your point, Drew, he's got a really good head on his shoulders. He's been, he's a level guy. And so, and a lot of goalies have inconsistencies and can be or idiosyncrasies, I should say. Eric doesn't seem to be one of them. I'm sure he's got his things he likes to do before a game, but he's always been a very good talker. He's a guy who knows how to handle himself in an interview, both, when it's on the record and off the record. And I think that's one thing you just take away from today's chat with him, was just how level he is and how mature he is as a person, that he can handle these types of situations and just adapt.
Let's be honest, guys. This is just, a happy ending to the story, right? Because when the Jets put Eric Comrie on waivers, they didn't want to, right? Like that wasn't something like they knew.
Well, they didn't want to lose him.
Exactly. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
And so they knew there was a good chance that he was going to be claimed. And then Mackenzie Blackwood had the injury, right? And then so Eric Comrie was, the second goalie to Scott Wedgwood there in New Jersey, right? So it's just, to me, like a good story that he's coming back. And make no mistake, like Eric Comrie is exactly the type of goaltender that you want behind Connor Hellebuyck and Laurent Brossoit. And we obviously hope, that Comrie's going to get to play some games either, for the Jets, or there always is the chance that he plays for the Moose. Although I suspect that, you don't want to go through that same situation where you have to expose him to waivers, right? So I think that this is just, and it goes back to what Dave said. He's been a longtime member of the Jets/Moose organization. We were there in 2013 when he was drafted. So for us personally, we've developed a relationship with having Eric on the show a couple of times back when we were on TSN Radio 1290. So just a great story, a great guy, and we wish him all the best for the rest of this year. And also just great that he's going to be out of quarantine.
Can you imagine spending that much time? That's going to be
tough for
28 days in 34.
I couldn't believe that. Like, at a certain point, you just want out. Like, you just want it to end.
Well, the mental impact on a professional athlete who's used to being so diligent and into such a routine. For schlubs like us, it's no big deal. We would just spend our time, sleeping some more. But, for a guy who, needs to keep himself as fit as possible and have that routine and make sure that he's performing at peak, at peak opportunity, it's a dramatic impact, and it's good to see that he's been able to sort of keep the good attitude and the right mindset throughout the course of the quarantine.
I thought you were going to give him some tips there, Drew. Like, you're in your room there. I know you've got the Peloton bike that we can't see right now, but
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You just look at me and you scream pinnacle of fitness. That's what it screams when you look at me.
You are the best golfer out of the three of us. So
that's damning with faint praise, though. Let me tell you, Dave refuses to play more than 9 holes.
Dave's a
9-holer.
And I only play Kildona Park.
And you only play Kildonan Park. Ezzy, you can't swing because if you took a real swing, you would collapse to the ground with your back would be thrown out. So simply by default of being able to do a full swing, I am the best golfer of all of us.
Well, that's why I said to Eric that I play grandpa golf, right? Like I don't hit it very far. I hit it about 200, down the middle, but I'm pretty,
amazing.
I don't usually spray it that much. But if I break 100, if I, shoot a 98 or 99, I'm pretty happy.
I strongly encourage anybody in our audience to find an opportunity to golf with Ezzy because Ezzy's big boy. As they say in Yiddish,
well, you won't have more fun.
You won't have more fun. And as they say in Yiddish, Ezzy's zaftig, which means he's thick. I would say, and then you see him swing, and it's almost like it's occurring in slow motion, and you're like, what is going on? Why is this guy swinging like that?
And also, you'll drink more beer than you've ever drank before if you play with me.
It's an incredible amount of beer. There's no question about that. Let's go back to what we were talking about before Eric joined us. And we're going to be joined in about 20 minutes by Mark Dumont. He covers the Montreal Canadiens, talk about the Jets opponent tonight, the Habs. Going back to what I asked about Brandon Montour. I mean, again, the Jets need a depth right side defenseman. This is a guy who's available, certainly not flashy. He's not going to cost a lot to acquire him. He's a guy who I think probably hasn't really met expectations. When he was with Anaheim and they traded him because they had a glut of defensemen to Buffalo thought they were getting really sort of a top 4 guy, and it really hasn't materialized that way for Montour. Is this a guy that if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, you're really doing your due diligence on acquiring him as much as almost any available right side defenseman right now?
Yeah, I think so. And you're right. I mean, on Buffalo, you look at the team, and Rasmus Ristolainen, you guys know, has had just a horrible situation there with COVID. I know we're going to get into Buffalo a little bit later. Jack Eichel's out of the lineup. Linus Ullmark is out of the lineup. So it's a really terrible situation there in Buffalo. So you're thinking to yourself, like, this is a great opportunity for Brandon Montour, right? Because as you mentioned, they acquired him from Anaheim and they had high hopes for him, but he hasn't played very well for them. So I think, there's always the chance that Kevin Cheveldayoff looks at someone like him, but, going back to Tucker Poolman, and, there is a chance that he plays tonight versus Montreal. You guys know that
he is skating, just so you know, Ezzy, just so you know, like he is skating right now.
Right.
Yeah,
and
Jets
you guys know
Jets practice just began.
Yeah.
Jets game day skate just
the only just to quickly interject, the only guys missing, according to Sarah Lesky of TSN, are Nathan Beaulieu and Derek Forward.
There you go. And the point I wanted to make, Dave, is I've been watching Poolman since the days of UND, and I know we all are big fans of Poolman on this show, and I still think he can be part of that Jets top 6. I really do. And the question that comes up is, if you're going to acquire a player like Brandon Montour, and I don't have his advanced stats in front of me, Drew. Maybe we'll one of us will pull those up. But
I have him there. He's less than 50% in terms of Corsi 4. So he's not a dominant possession player, but he's right around the 47-48% mark at 5-on-5 in terms of possession. Again, this is a depth defenseman, guy who,
and that's the point I was going to make, Drew. That I don't think that you're expecting Montour to be more than a third pairing defenseman, but the question then becomes, well, where does that leave Tucker Poolman? Because obviously Dylan DeMello, and Neil Pionk are your 2 best right defensemen, in my opinion. And I think you guys would probably agree with that. And we do expect, at some point, Dylan DeMello to play alongside Josh Morrissey on that top pair. And then why would you break up Forbort and Pionk? There's absolutely no reason. They've been fantastic together. So I guess my question would be, do you really need, is Brandon Montour going to make you that much better? I'm
not advocating necessarily for Montour to come into the Jets lineup. I'm advocating for him. I mean, when you lose one of your right side guys, like we saw, the Jets don't have a right shooting defenseman. Now they are fortunate in that, Sami Niku can play on his off wing and is comfortable playing on his off side, and he's done it before. Prefers it, to your point, Dave. Yes, exactly right. But if you, not that you're going to necessarily lose 2 defensemen on your right side, but it just adds a little bit more depth, because that the depth that you have in your at the Moose level is more on the left side than it is on your right side. So you just add another guy. You're going to get another roster spot if everything goes according to plan, quote unquote plan, which I'm not what I'm assuming is the plan. It's not like they're telling me this is the plan, but Eric Comrie's going to go to your taxi squad. That means Anton Forsberg, who's been taking up a roster spot, that spot is going to be freed up. You can bring in eventually if you bring in somebody you have that 23rd man roster spot that fills a hole potentially for your Jets team. And Montour just seems like a guy right now who's not going to cost you a lot. Now there's a question and an argument. Do the Jets need to make a bigger splash on the right side of their defense? And I just don't see that happening, given everything that's already happened this year, given that it'll be a 2-week quarantine. I don't see them spending a first-round pick to acquire a right side defenseman right now.
Well, yeah, and I'll let Dave get in here, but again, I would answer your question with a question, which maybe makes me think that I could go into politics. But no, I'm joking. But I mean,
there's too many scandals in the background.
I was going to say that'd be great, Ezzy. I wish you'd go into politics, because let me tell you, we would own you, baby.
Yeah, I would owe you guys a lot of favors, right? But no, but my question,
I'd be like, why is Main Street now turned to Minuk Street? No reason.
The problem is that we've only spent the last 12 years documenting all of your mistakes live on air. Yes. Aside from that, though, there's no skeletons in your closet. Actually, they're not in your closet.
I was going to say, the one thing about Ezzy is, unlike most politicians, everything he's ever done is definitely out there for public consumption.
He's an open book. And I mean, I'll be your campaign manager. I'm more behind the scenes guy. Ezzy for mayor, who's on board for Ezzy for mayor right now going forward? I see no reason why not. I mean, the beard makes you sort of a unique personality, never mind your regular personality. Ezzy for mayor, let's start the campaign right now this Saturday morning.
No, politics is not my thing, but getting back to the defense there, I think it's unquestionable that when you look at who the next up defensemen are when Tucker Poolman is healthy, it's Sami Niku and Logan Stanley, right? And in no particular order. And so if you're going to bring in a right shot defenseman, I guess I would expect it to be closer to the trade deadline, guys. Like that's kind of what I see happening. Like, I don't know if there's any urgency on Kevin Cheveldayoff's part if you only have one injured defenseman. And I do go back to, and I kind of feel like we've been talking about this for the last 3 weeks, right? But I do think you have to consider this. You've got Ville Heinola and Dylan Sandberg playing in the AHL, and that there's a good chance. I would lean towards Heinola more so than Sandberg, Dave. But that there's a chance that Heinola could be called up really at any point, right? Because Heinola they haven't had a D prospect like this since Josh Morrissey, in my opinion, right? That there's a good chance he could be called up during the season. So that's something I think you should factor in, Drew. And the reason is obviously he's a left shot defenseman. But what I mean is, I don't know if you don't want to crowd the D pool a little bit too much. You know what I mean? Like, I think that if you're going to bring in someone, it has to be for a reason. And that reason would obviously to give you more depth. So I guess, I'm in favor of bringing in a right shot defenseman to make your depth better on that side. But I don't think it's going to be anybody that you're going to have to give up, a roster player, or you're going to have to give up a prospect or anything like that. So if it's not Brandon Montour, it's going to be somebody like Brandon Montour, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's simply just a depth move. You're not suggesting that Tucker Poolman come out of the lineup, Ezzy, obviously. You're suggesting that if you need to. I mean, look, the reality is the Jets used Nelson Nogier last year, right? I think it was against Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh. I mean, you've got situations that, again, the taxi squad is a buffer. So people have to realize, like, again, that's where you want those guys. You want, if Logan Stanley's not in your lineup, then Logan Stanley should be with the Manitoba Moose. You know what I mean? Like, that's the idea with these guys. It's not a function of wasting their time on the taxi squad. So whereas a Montour, if he's on your taxi squad, it isn't the end of the world. Or he's on your roster and he's not playing, it's not the end of the world. And that's, I think, all you're suggesting. And I think that's the idea of depth isn't a bad thing to have from an organization perspective, because the Jets knew it better than anyone last year when they, like I said, they went to Nelson Nogier, who played his first game since, I think, he played that 10-game stretch with the Jets in his rookie season. So, I mean, again, necessity sometimes creates opportunity. And look, Logan Stanley, as I said, we talked about earlier, came in phenomenal shape and took advantage of the opportunity that was in front of him. And now people want Logan Stanley in the lineup. So you can create an opportunity for yourself. But I just think, like, to have depth, to sit back on and know that, look, I mean, we know how heavy games are. We know, especially in the condensed schedule, you're going to have injuries. I mean, teams are having injuries all the time. And so it's not a bad thing to have, a guy who can step in if you need him. And again, we have to factor in, if you have Heinola with the Moose and you want him to be a recall, Well, you can't recall him from Montreal unless you're flying him private, right? I don't know exactly the rule, but the reality is, you know, if he's in Montreal, you're really not having access to him if you're in Winnipeg, or vice versa. You're in Toronto,
You're saying the Moose are on the road.
I'm saying whenever, you know, whatever, when the teams are not in the same city, and it's possible, look, it's possible when they're on the road, they could be in the same city. It's possible when they're in Winnipeg, they could be in the same city. I haven't looked on the road, but the reality is, so you'll have access to these players. I just think, like, again, to have veteran depth guys, you know, like they did with Boteto. I mean, again, I'm not advocating for Boteto. I'm saying to have guys who can sit on your taxi squad and it doesn't hurt their development. And I know, like we talked about with Sean in that first hour, you have to weigh those things in, right? I mean, this is a year unlike any other. So players, look, junior players aren't even playing right now. So development this year is a luxury more than anything. If you can develop your players, that's going to be a huge benefit organizationally, I think. But it is not necessarily something that is absolutely going to happen across the board. And that's one thing we have to factor in, right? Like, and me as well, who says, oh, if you don't have Vesalainen or Gustafsson in your lineup, why not with the Moose? But, you know, again, like I said, there's that balancing act this year, unlike any other.
Absolutely right there, Dave Minuk. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We are live here on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that subscribe button, get alerted each and every time we go live here. Also, while you're at it, subscribe to our podcast. That way you won't miss an episode or a minute of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. All the information about subscribing to the podcast is available on our website, illegalcurve.com. Mark Dumont he's a special contributor to the Montreal Canadiens. He's going to join us in about 10 minutes time, talk more about the Jets opponent, the rematch tonight between the Jets and the Habs. It's a 9:00 puck drop. Of course, game available on Sportsnet and on CBC, so you can tune in there. Also available, of course, on radio on CJOB. This
like, if
segment
you're a Habs fan, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Let me just do my rumors read, Ezzy, and then you can ask your question.
Terrible
this segment
timing.
is brought to you by Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, officially declared the funniest place in Winnipeg by Illegal Curve Hockey. For over 30 years, Rumors has been bringing Winnipeg the best in stand-up comedy. To purchase tickets or for a list of performers and showtimes, visit rumorscomedyclub.com. Rumors is absolutely champing at the bit to reopen. They want to reopen so badly, but they're not going to do it until it's completely safe for you. It's coming soon. The end is in sight to all this. I know it's hard to believe, but I truly do believe the end is in sight to all of this. And when it is, we're always going to need to laugh. Rumors Comedy Club will be the place to do that. And in the meantime, they're doing Zoom comedy nights every Friday night. Festival quality lineups available, tickets through the Rumors website. Check them out online, rumorscomedyclub.com. Mr. Ginsburg, you were saying.
Well, I was just going to say, we were complaining about the 9:00 start time tonight because we're old men, but what about the Habs fans in Montreal? That's a 10:00 start time. So it's a little bit of a unique situation, but obviously, you know, it's going to be a very fascinating game for a lot of reasons, guys. Like, this is a must win for the Montreal Canadiens. And it's, you know, pretty hard to say that at this point in the season, right? We're not even at the midway point of the season, but, you know, they need to stop the bleeding at this point. And we talked about it earlier, and we'll talk about it with Mark Dumont, but, you know, they're going to go with Jake Allen tonight. But, you know, this is a team that can't afford another loss. I mean, the Jets have started to separate themselves. The Oilers have started to separate themselves. I mean, luckily, you know, Vancouver and Calgary aren't exactly playing, you know, at the highest level right now, and they're not knocking on the door to pass the Habs. But you know, this is going to be a very interesting game for a lot of reasons.
Well, let me ask you that question, Ezzy. You mentioned Vancouver and you mentioned Calgary. Both had awful weeks. The Vancouver Canucks 0-2-1 in their 3 games this week, scoring 6 goals, giving up 11. And then you look at the Calgary Flames. I mean, this team, that performance against the Ottawa Senators the other night was an absolute tire fire of a disaster. They're feeling good about themselves. They're coming off getting 3 points out of 4 against the Maple Leafs. Then they laid that egg against Ottawa. The Flames 1-2-1 this week, 6 goals in 4 games, and 15 goals against Montreal or Calgary and Vancouver. Which of the two teams is sort of in a worse spot right now, you know, given their circumstances?
Well, it's got to be Vancouver because of the games played, right? Like, they've played more, I think they've played more games than any other team in the league with 24 games, right? Like, if you think about that, that's, absolutely crazy, because I think the Devils are at what, 14 games?
Well, you almost have to put an asterisk next to all the American teams with all the
Sabres as
COVID
well.
issues.
I know the Sabres are at 14 or 15 games. So, I mean, you have some teams that have played 10 more games. So in a condensed schedule, that's pretty ridiculous. But I would say Vancouver, right? And it's not just the games played, but just having watched Vancouver recently against the Jets, like, just, it doesn't look like a confident team. We were a little bit concerned. I've always been a big Braden Holtby guy, and I still think he's an NHL goaltender, but I definitely don't know if he is the right goaltender to turn this around. Like, you look at the St. Louis Blues guys a couple of years back and what happened with Jordan Binnington, like, that happens so rarely, where you have a young goaltender, that comes up, through the American Hockey League and is able to change that. Thatcher Demko obviously did it in the playoffs last year. And I think at some point you're probably going to have to, hang your hopes on Thatcher Demko, and then hope that, Braden Holtby can come in every, fourth or fifth game, Dave. But I look at Vancouver and Calgary, and both of these teams are flawed teams. When you compare those two teams to the Jets and the Leafs, especially, maybe less so the Oilers, because the Oilers are unique in that they have, two of the best players in the game in McDavid and Draisaitl, and good supporting cast. But especially with the Leafs and the Jets that have really four good lines, 6 really good defensemen, excellent, goaltending, and in my opinion, more so for the Jets maybe. But, I just think both the Flames and the Canucks are teams that I there's nothing that I've seen so far that would make me think that they're going to turn this around quickly. I'll say that much.
Dave, before you get in on this, just wanted an update from Winnipeg Jets game day skate, which most of the players who are in the lineup are now off the ice. It does not appear that there's going to be any lineup changes for the Jets. Connor Hellebuyck, we know, is going to start in goal. Tucker Poolman staying on for extra work with the taxi squad. So Sami Niku will get another game in the Jets lineup after his good performance on Thursday night, and very much a case for the Winnipeg Jets right now. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And with the back-to-back coming Monday, Tuesday, that might be a time where, as we spoke about in, I think, the first hour of the show, you might see an opportunity for a guy like Harkins or Vesalainen to get back in the lineup so as to not tax some of your veteran guys on your fourth line too heavily, Dave.
Well, and I think this makes a lot of sense. One, because you just won with that lineup, so it makes sense to roll it, and you played a pretty good game, so why not roll it out again? And two, I think the idea of being cautious is especially, like I said, in a condensed schedule. Now the Jets have the benefit of not having it as significantly condensed right now. They've had some pretty big breaks in terms of when they come back from a road or whatnot. But I think to give Poolman that extra rest, if he's not certain, because you're going to need him, you're going to need to lean hard on him. And I think so it's a twofold advantage. Number one, you get the advantage of giving Sami Niku, who is probably going to feel confident after that. He hadn't played since January 19th. Came in. To Ezzy's point, he played a quiet, calm game. And I think for him, you say, okay, well, you know what? You're a guy who's had tremendous success. You were a horse in the American Hockey League. We're going to give you that opportunity here. Again, you're not going to be playing top pairing minutes, but we're going to give you another opportunity because you look good. And it gives an opportunity for Tucker Poolman to heal. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And again, like I said, from Sami Niku's perspective, you can't put him on waivers because you're going to you would likely lose them. I don't know.
You're going to lose them.
I don't know. No, to be honest with you, though, there's been a lot of guys who have gone on waivers that I anticipated being claimed, like Honka in Dallas. Like, there's guys who I've anticipated.
What about Paul Byron in Montreal?
That's what I mean. Like, there's guys, like, I used to think early in the season, yes, I think that was more likely. I don't know how significant it is, but the truth is, you've got a player, you've got an asset. I think you need to get the benefit of having him play. Now look at that setup. Whoa.
That is a setup. Mark Dumont from the Montreal Canadiens special contributor is going to join us momentarily here, and he's got a better setup than we do. So we need to clearly step up our game in the coming weeks to match what Mark has. Let's keep talking, though, about the Jets, and while we wait for Mark to connect in with us and to talk about the Jets' opponent tonight.
How did Mark, how did he learn to make himself invisible? That's what I want to know.
He's got all the power. He's got a good backdrop, and he can blend in perfectly to it. He's got all the talents in the world. I mean, it's going to be an interesting game. You play the same team twice. The Habs, you have to wonder, and we'll ask Mark about this coming up momentarily here. Take your time, Mark, no rush. How that team is going to play differently with Jake Allen behind them. It just seems, when you're skaters and you don't have any confidence in your goalie, or your goalie doesn't display any confidence, and then lets in that bad goal, it just is so detrimental to your team going forward. And I think Mark is ready now, so we'll have Mark unmute himself. And Mark, to that point, this Habs team, they're up 2-0 on Thursday night. They're up 3-1 on Thursday night. The Jets get a nice goal to make it 3-2, and then the 3-3 goal is just not a good goal. The 4-3 goal is a worse goal. How do the Habs skaters have much faith in Carey Price given his struggles as of late?
I think Carey Price, one of the benefits is he has that aura, regardless of how he plays. Now, I think there's a bit of a reckoning coming as well when it comes to Carey Price's overall results. Let's be completely honest here. They haven't been great. And the reason why I'm not too worried, Drew, and I understand Habs fans should get worried, the reason they went out and got Jake Allen was for this, this is the exact situation. It's not just a rest thing. It's if Price falters, and we're seeing he is faltering. So absolutely, confidence is part of it. It's much more difficult to play. I ask defensemen all the time, is it difficult to play in front of a goalie you don't trust? They say, no. guys, come on. That's not true. We see it. And I know too, especially when I was playing as a goalie, I know the guys would stress out in front of me because they knew I was bad. So no, that's a factor. But what we're seeing now is the Jake Allen aspect of it all. Is that they're going to put some faith into him. And I think that's key for Price. For the first time in his life, he's allowed to falter and not have all the pressure on him. So thus the Jake Allen signing will hopefully provide some reprieve for Carey Price.
Mark, right before we had you on, I said that this was a must win. And I realized that, a lot of people probably hate hearing that because it's one of those hockey cliches, like, getting pucks deep and 200-foot game, right? But when you look at where the Habs are, and granted, they're only 3 points behind the Jets and they've played the same amount of games, but, they had created that cushion with that great start. So how desperate do the Habs have to be, considering that, they were up 2-0 on the Jets and it looked like, they were in control of that game and they were going to get the victory.
Yeah. And they didn't get that fun coaching change boost, which a lot of teams kind of count on. It is like, there's so much time as right now. That's the issue, but there's not, right? Like we're approaching almost the halfway point to the season. So I think one of the reasons you saw that coaching change is because there's pressure in the organization to make this happen because of all the acquisitions. So yeah, it's not a must win, but it's a must gain momentum. I think what we saw against Winnipeg was, first of all, we got to give credit to the Jets. They did a good job shutting down the neutral zone, but the Habs had almost no speed through the neutral zone, and they live and die off the rush. So they have to get back to that style of play, and that style of play will create some momentum. And then we won't be talking about must wins. But no, you're absolutely right. Something needs to happen in a hurry, because as we all know, we were saying it's a little too early to declare them very good. Well, now it's starting to be a bit too late to declare them very good. So no, it has to get going, and it's all about speed through the neutral zone. And as we saw, speed through the neutral zone means you provide puck support for your defensemen. That's the thing. Habs forwards are cheating. They're not giving them outlet options. So when that F1, F2 comes down, the defenseman is panicking because he knows either I rim it out and the faceoff is coming back, or I lose the puck. So it's a full team effort that's necessary here to create that momentum. But I'm very close to saying must win tonight against the Jets. Then again, I have a feeling the Habs aren't the only Canadian team that's going to go through this. They're not even the only one that went through this year. So it'll be fun to see how the whole division shakes out by the end of the year.
And so, Mark, what kind of coach are they getting in Dominique Ducharme?
Yeah, that's a good question, because for the first time in a long time, the Habs have essentially a guy with no pro head coaching experience here. Now, Ducharme is the polar opposite of let's say a Brian Kilray, or maybe you guys don't know Brian Kilray that much in Winnipeg, but
it's Ottawa 67s, we know him.
Right, Killer, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Because I'm from Ottawa, so I always reference the Killer. But yeah, so apparently everyone else knows about Killer K, but he's the opposite of a Pat Burns. Let's put it that way. Whereas Pat Burns, that whole cop persona, that was real. Like, I was just speaking to some players and they said, like, they came to blows. Shane Corson and Pat Burns, literally, like, they lined up Irish style and they started punching each other in the face. You're never going to get that with Ducharme. He's a communicator. he's the kind of guy that doesn't get upset when his players push back a little bit. Because I think, Dave, what we're seeing now with the younger guys, it's not that they're not willing to do something, but they want to know why, right? Like it's no longer, okay, I'm just going to run through this wall. It's tell me why I'm running through this wall. So Sham is the communicator there. He has worked with, he had one of the best junior teams of all time when Halifax was there. Martin Frick, Nathan McKinnon, and Jonathan Drouin on the same line. And he kind of managed that, which was pretty interesting because Drouin, I remember him yelling at Sham because Sham took him off after 2 minutes on a penalty kill. Like he played the full penalty kill, but Drouin wanted to keep going and he just laid into him. And I remember Sham didn't say a word after the game. You saw everyone went to get off the bench and he grabbed Jonathan Drouin and sat him back down, and it was like, hey, we're going to talk calmly. We're going to talk smoothly, but you're going to work for me. So we're going to work together, but I get the deciding vote here. So I think he's got that calm presence, but that you can gravitate towards as a younger player. The key right now, guys, if we're being honest, it's not the 5-on-5 play, it's special teams. And that's not necessarily up to the Shams. So the Habs have to figure out the special teams in a hurry. It will come down to Sham, but there's a reason why Kirk Muller was part of that Claude Julien firing.
Mark Dumont is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Mark covers the Montreal Canadiens. We're talking about the Habs ahead of the rematch later tonight. A late night game there for you, Mark. Hope you got the coffee going on.
What's that all about? Is this how everyone else feels when Toronto goes out west? Is this what happens? Like,
no, when Toronto goes out west, you know that they rearrange the broadcast time. That game starts at 4:00 local time in Vancouver to account for Toronto.
Okay, but isn't there a Western game that's starting before this one? Tonight?
Well,
yeah, I believe so.
Is Toronto in Edmonton tonight?
I believe Toronto's going before Montreal, Winnipeg, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But hey, I won't complain against. I won't say that the East is getting too hard of a shake here when it comes to the schedule. I won't complain too much.
Fair enough.
Toronto, Edmonton does start at 6:00 Central. Yeah, 7:00 Eastern.
You know what, though, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'd probably put Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews on my top billing right now, if I'm being perfectly honest. But anyhow.
Matthews and McDavid might win a little bit more than Scheifele against, pick a
Philippe
Danault,
Danault, there you go. Yeah. Will he get his first goal this year? Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's sort of, I was watching the broadcast on Thursday, and Dennis Bayak, who does our games here locally, said that, Philippe Danault was, still looking for his first goal of the season. And, I definitely did a double take, the cartoon style. Whoa. And, to know a guy who was so key for the Habs last season, really struggling to start this year. And he's getting some assists, but, is that sort of one of the keys to getting the Habs back on track, is getting Danault to find the back of the net?
One of the main reasons, Drew, that it was working so well at the beginning of the season, it wasn't just like Danault was actually playing well, but you had Jesperi Kotkaniemi that was providing offense. You had Nick Suzuki that was providing offense. You had Jake Evans that was scoring shorthanded goals. So you had every line was providing. And the Canadiens for the past how many years have counted on Gallagher, Tatar, Danault. The unfortunate part here is that they are actually producing decent numbers. And the nerd in me was saying, like, they're going to score more. They're going to score more. But the Habs just simply didn't have that time right now. Like, if we're playing if it was based on merit, Philippe Danault would have sat some games, not Thomas Tatar. But the Habs just don't have another center. So it's not that he's not working hard. I checked in with my nerd buddies and they were telling me, like, he's probably the player in the NHL that has the highest expected goals without scoring right now. Like, he's top 3 or 4. So it's coming, but keep in mind, this is a guy that just rejected a fairly big contract offer last season because he was building upon it. So there's that pressure as well. This is a guy whose offense has been, if we're being perfectly honest, not inflated, but helped along by playing with a certain Brendan Gallagher. Brendan Gallagher is like a cheat code for any coach. You put him on a line, he's going to score. Thomas Tatar is really good in neutral zone. Like, Danault was good in all that. He built the chemistry, but we're starting to see if we pull him up away from that line, we're not seeing as much chemistry. So yeah, it's key for him to get going. But it's key for that entire line that Tatar, Danault, Gallagher have to get back to scoring. At the beginning of the year, we're saying it's great. There's other lines scoring, but then you needed that offense from that. It's their number one line, So Sham brought them back together. And hopefully we're going to see a little more. It's not just goals from Danault I want to see. I want to see creativity. He almost seems a little defeated, but hey, guys, you know how it is. After a while, you start to get, it's the old, you grip the stick a little too hard, and that's really what's happening. So hopefully a garbage goal, a Dino Ciccarelli goal would do Philippe Danault a lot of good.
And Mark, you make a really good point, and that's one of the reasons why, before the season started, I know that Drew and I actually picked the Montreal Canadiens to go to the Stanley Cup final, so maybe I jinxed them, but no, I mean Drew and I, and Dave, I know Dave picked the Canadiens to make the playoffs, I believe, but I and Drew and I picked them to finish second in the division, and a lot of that had to do with the depth, right? Bringing in Tyler Toffoli, trading Max Domi for Josh Anderson, even bringing a guy like Corey Perry in, even if he's not playing every game, it can't hurt to have a guy
even
like
that.
that.
Frolik hasn't played yet. He's their 14th forward.
Absolutely,
That's not bad.
And Joel Armia picked up a couple goals, and one of the guys I wanted to ask you about was somebody who you just mentioned, Jonathan Drouin. Played in Halifax for Dominique Ducharme, and a guy that he had an assist on one of Joel Armia's goals. But when you talk about that forward depth and how they need more offensive output out of Philip Deneau, is Jonathan Drouin maybe one of those keys that people don't talk about enough, because we know his offensive ability. Like, this guy was a high draft pick, was an unbelievable player in the queue. Is this a guy that you're looking towards to be kind of one of those leaders offensively on that second line?
Yes, but I'd actually say that he's done that. Like, if you look at his numbers, they're not amazing. I think he's got like 10 points in 17 games or so, and he just got his second goal. That was his second goal against Winnipeg. I would actually say Jonathan Drouin is suffering from an old reputation. If you're seeing he's really, really working hard right now. He's actually been one of the Canadiens' best players. And if I can nerd it up for a moment again, in past years, one of the issues with Drouin is, when people said he's bad defensively, like, the numbers agreed. He wasn't just bad defensively. He was he couldn't pick his goalie out of a police lineup. That he just really wasn't good, and the effort wasn't there. It's been there. His numbers are fantastic. I'd say Jonathan Drouin is the least of the worries. Now, the big issue with Drouin was expectations. When he came over, they kind of sold him as a French Canadian savior and as a center. So you wanted to kill, two birds with one French Canadian stone, and that was just putting too much on him. I never thought Jonathan Drouin was an 80-point guy, if I'm being perfectly honest. I see him as a 60-point guy that, as long as he puts a bit of effort in his own zone, that's what you get for $5 million nowadays, right? Again, the issue is that he was their highest paid forward for about 3 years. No other team's highest paid forward was only $5 million, but that was the case with Montreal. So now that he's more in a supporting role, I think he's very important, and he's doing his job exactly as you wanted. I think he's one of just those fantastic supporting elements. I wouldn't necessarily, count on him as your primary source of offense. But honestly, so far, so good for Jonathan Drouin. And it's Habs fans and analysts are having a really hard time giving him credit. But I mean, the guy, if everyone was playing like Drouin right now, the Habs probably wouldn't have fired their coach.
Saturday morning, you're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We are live on our YouTube channel, Illegal Curve Radio. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash that subscribe button. Join us each and every time we go live. And of course, remember the podcast, subscribe to that as well. In case you miss any of the program, in case you miss any of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, hit the subscribe button on the podcast. Get that sent to your device automatically each and every week.
Mark, I had to bring my mom out of retirement because she's a retired French teacher, but there's so many games between the Jets and the Habs. And of course, the Moose are in Montreal right now to play Laval.
Yeah. Previously,
if you wanted to see the Laval Rocket play hockey, you had to drive 45 minutes from Montreal. Now you have them in the home building. Obviously, with the tax squad, it's a little different, but what benefits are you seeing having that team in Montreal? And what players are you seeing emerge? They obviously picked up a win last night over the Moose after dropping the first two of this series. They play again this afternoon. But what players are you kind of seeing emerge from that Laval team?
It's clear, Dave, that you know a little bit of the Montreal geography, because it's technically a 10-minute drive, but Montreal, it's a 45-minute drive. So that's very accurate. Or a $3 ride on the metro. But what's exciting right now for Laval, obviously, you're dangling that carrot, right? It's like, hey guys, if you get on the subway right now, you could be at the Bell Center in 10 minutes playing hockey where you see Jean Béliveau and Guy Lafleur and Ken Dryden. So there's that aspect of it, the carrot dangling. Now, double-edged sword, right? Because a lot of guys can start to lose focus. We saw last year with Ryan Poehling. He really lost a little bit of focus there in terms of he needed to establish himself in the AHL before making the NHL, and he wanted to kind of skip that phase. So you have to manage the expectations there. And also, disadvantage is when they send someone down, I mean, not anymore because I mean, I work for them now, but it used to be, I'd be there right in his face the next morning. Like, you know, guys hated it. It was this Pavlovian response that every time they saw my face, they knew something bad had happened. Like, oh God, I got sent to the minors. So this Irish guy with the big heads in my face with his coffee breath, you know, asking me what I can do better. But they have rebuilt significantly at the AHL level. I think Joël Bouchard has been just such a breath of fresh air. The Habs really had a stale development program, for being perfectly honest. Guys, they for over 10 years, the only guy they produced was Gallagher, and he spent half a season there during lockout. So like 10 years not producing a single player in the AHL. That set them back 15 years, right? So now you have 10 players under the age of 21 on the roster. Really strong, good veterans. You want guys like Caden Primo. He's the heir apparent to Carey Price. He's getting all the starts. Keep in mind here, like, they're going to have to replace Price at one point. So Primo is in that perfect situation. Ryan Poehling has focused up. He's playing a lot of minutes, and that's super key. They also brought in Caden Gooley was there. You know, I mean, he just went back to Prince Albert, but they got to watch their first round pick play in Montreal. And the coaches were just blown away. Like, this guy is I mean, he's a beast. He's just gigantic for his age, but he's just so smart. Like, I don't want to say Shea Weber, because that's so unfair to compare him to, but guess what his coaches say? They say that name, right? So, but except for he can skate. He, like, the big man can fly, right? So there's a lot of exciting things happen there. I'd say, Dave, the biggest issue is there's not necessarily a game breaker at the AHL level, but that's because Kotkaniemi is in the NHL and Suzuki's in the NHL, Romanov's in the NHL. So they've rebuilt on the fly. It's been a lot healthier for the Canadiens, but now you need results. Like, they need to win and they need to produce players. Slowly yet surely, Jake Evans is the first kind of taste we have of that. But before we declare victory, they have to produce a lot more players. And they've had 45 picks in the last 3 years. So now is the time to really get it going.
Unless I've missed anything, Mark, Josh Anderson probably will not be in the Habs lineup tonight. Injured in that when he got tangled up with Dylan DeMello. I'm pretty sure I saw Habs social media calling it a slew foot.
I called it a slew foot. Yeah.
There you go. You were there. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
But you know, I like to. I don't think it was on purpose whatsoever. Like an actual slew foot, you literally have to, you know, foot in. That was, it looked like, but no, he didn't. Like, and Anderson was leaning forward too. But don't forget who signs my paycheck, right?
At least you know that. So, you know, if you embrace that, that's good. You know, how big of a loss? Obviously, we know he'd come over from Columbus in the offseason. It seemed like he had fit very well with the Habs so far. So, you know, how are the Habs going to try and replicate to some extent what he brings to the lineup? It's not coincidental, I think, that they were up 2-0 when he was in the lineup on Thursday night, and then after that, he obviously outscored 6-1 without him in the lineup.
He is quickly becoming one of the most, if not the most important players, because if you watch the Canadiens at the beginning of the year, like, Winnipeg didn't really get to see them much, but when they were dominating, they were scoring off the rush. Like, their speed through the neutral zone was just fantastic. And Josh Anderson, I mean, I watch him go and I'm like, geez, how does this guy, first of all, he blows my mind. I know he's fast, but just that size shouldn't move that fast. And the fact that he creates high danger chances off the rush is something the Habs need to get back into the habit of creating all the time. He's one of the few guys that can do it efficiently in almost every single shift. So huge loss, Drew. He's fit in seamlessly because, yeah, the Habs want to add size, but they want to add speed as well. And he's one of, you know, he's really one of those rare combinations of the two. And he creates off the rush. When he was creating off the rush, Kotkaniemi was creating off the rush. We saw other lines like with Tyler Toffoli creating off the rush, just because, again, monkey see, monkey do. But unfortunately, he's lost now. And the health aspect is something I know Habs fans are very nervous about. So hopefully this isn't long term. But no, crucial to the Canadiens. They needed kind of that game-breaking presence. Anderson isn't elite, in my opinion, because there's only 5 guys I consider elite in every position, but he does have the ability to break games wide open, and without him, it'll be much, much more difficult to score off the rush.
Art, just wanted to go back to the coaching change that happened earlier this week, right? And you know, Kirk Muller, I think, you know, I think is a very popular person in Montreal for obvious reasons, going back to the '93 Cup win. But I think some people were surprised that he was included with Claude Julien, and then obviously, you know, nobody wanted Claude Julien to be fired either. We should mention that, but
no.
You know, is bringing in a guy like Alex Burrows, speaking of, you know, players developing through the AHL with the Manitoba Moose, like, is that just about bringing in a different voice into that coaching staff?
Well, first of all, Claude Julien was one of the nicest. You know, we hear this a lot, but you'll never hear a bad story about Claude Julien. Like, not even from his players. Like, this is genuinely one of those good guys. Kirk Muller, if we're being perfectly honest, his tenure in charge of special teams was questionable at best. Statistically speaking, the Canadiens have had some of the worst special teams in the NHL for several years, and they missed the playoffs several times just because of that. When you have such a good, strong 5-on-5 team, and you have weak special teams, to me, that speaks to strategy, right, guys? Because I mean, if you can enter the zone at 5-on-5 and you struggle in the power play, what's going on here? Obviously, you've changed up your system. You're not using your speed as much. So I do believe it was time for him to go. Now, Burrows, what I love about him in Laval is that so many guys would just go up to, like, let's keep in mind, never drafted. He spent 250 games in the ECHL and AHL before even stepping ice on an NHL rink there, you know? So he's the perfect embodiment of hard work. Again, he's a player's coach, though. Like, that's what he's really brought in to be the communicator. He's kind of like the Gerard Gallant of the Habs now. But I do believe, and this is something he's spoken to me before, he wants to improve on his strategy aspect. So he's still learning on the fly. Let's keep in mind, he only had 2 years in Laval. But he will, like, the pressure is going to be on him immediately to make that power play work. And, you know, we won't have a 6-year grace period. So I'm not surprised Muller is gone. I'm excited to see what Burrows can do. It's going to be a challenge for him, though. Like, he's you know, again, really smart player, but the Habs have a crutch that's called Shea Weber. It's not his fault, but they overuse him, right? Like, they don't use him as a decoy, or, you know, like, for example, at one point I was watching when Patrick Laine was playing in Winnipeg, they would use him once in a while as a decoy. Like, hey, you know, you got to keep that shot lane blocked so it opens up for other players. The Habs really struggle at that. It's all about feeding Weber. So I think Burrows is going to have to figure out a way to basically take away the Weber addiction of it all. Because once you do that, once you open up the other options, then Weber becomes a threat again. Right now, not much of a threat, unfortunately, on the power play.
Mark, when Ben Sherratt left Winnipeg and signed with Montreal, he had a big 9-goal, 12 assist season, you know, in 69 games for the Habs. He's had a little bit of a fall off, you know, from a production standpoint, but how have things gone for the former Jets defenseman?
I mean, I like to joke and call him a sniper because like last year he was he doing that in Winnipeg, just scoring these gorgeous, like, top corner goals? Was that a thing, or
No,
not really.
No, that was an anomaly.
Right. Okay. Because he was really the defensive defenseman. I think right now, in my honest opinion, I would break up the Weber-Sherratt pairing, and I don't think it's necessarily on either or. I think that they both have some issues that the other defenseman, that the partner doesn't necessarily complement. But so far, Sherratt has fit in a lot better than I anticipated. I essentially said when he came over, I'm like, it's an expensive Jordy Ben. You know, and I was wrong, guys. Like, I was so wrong about that. He's a lot more mobile than I thought. The decision making. Oh, is my internet working? Can you guys see me?
You're still there.
Okay, good. My Zoom is telling me my connection is unstable. Well, one of the issues is that sometimes.
No, we're the unstable ones, Mark.
Fair enough. Well, yeah. Well, Sherratt and Weber's connection is unstable at times too, because again, the speed's not there, guys. Like, the speed is not there. So I think Sherratt right now is getting the short end of the stick because a lot of people are blaming him for the woes on that top pairing. I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think you can point to anything in Sherratt's numbers and say he's the reason Weber is, you know, kind of underplaying right now or struggling to a certain extent. But no, he's been really good, Dave. He's been better than I expected, but he is on a slight dip down right now. And you're going to want to expect just a little more in terms of smart play from him. We saw him lose his temper a few times. Obviously, Tkachuk will make you lose your mind. That's just, you know, fair enough. But it was after that he was going out of his way to try to hit him, and he was pulling himself out of position, and that's something you just can't do anymore. You know, he's not Shea Weber. He won't get away with 4 free cross checks before the 5th one's penalized. You know, so if he goes out and he takes that dirty hit, he's going to get called and he'll be pulled out of position. And I think that's right now. It's not just a Ben Sherratt issue. The whole team is playing with a bit too much emotion. You know, the Habs kind of try to change their mentality. They're like, yeah, we're fast, but we're big now too. It's not working out all that well. I'd rather see them go back to the fast team that can also hit, and that's what Ben Sherratt fits in perfectly with that whole system.
Mark, well, last question for you. I mean, we know Marc Bergevin, used one of the quivers in his arrow in dismissing Claude Julien and hiring Dominique Ducharme. Is that the final quiver he's got? Is if this doesn't turn around, is Marc Bergevin the next guy right in the crosshairs, or is he sort of still immune to the slings and arrows, I guess, of Habs Nation?
You're trying to get me in trouble here, right?
Sorry. You don't have to answer.
Drew, don't you remember when Mark said who signed his paycheck?
I was like, see the mic
punt on it.
I'll say this is that most GMs will get 2 to 3 coaches, right? Like statistically speaking.
Yeah.
And this will essentially be his third. But at the same time, when you look at it, like up until a week ago, people were saying Bergevin was going to win GM of the year, like slam dunk, right? So things can change very quickly. I think Jeff Molson's a very pragmatic man in his approach to this. He knows that ripping it apart for the sake of ripping it apart doesn't make much sense. He needs to find a good candidate. Don't forget, he's got to be a francophone, that candidate. So that withers down the overall pool. Nothing will be done just for the sake of doing it, but I do know Jeff Molson's very hungry for success. Like a lot of fans, one of the things that hurts him the most is fans will go on Twitter and say, like, you don't care. I don't think there's a bigger fan of a team than Jeff Molson amongst all the owners. Like, he loves the Habs. Like, he's a big Habs fan. That's all he does, just cheers for them. So I know he wants success, but I also know he's seeing slowly and surely the tower is finally being built, and you have that risk. I always go back to, for example, Washington. Now they have Ovechkin, but they could have torn that down so many times, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how many times did they just get frustrating bounced by the Penguins over and over? And it takes so long to build a winner in hockey. I don't know if Bergevin has that talent to build a winner yet, but I think that Molson will give him at the very least until the end of the year and possibly even beyond. I don't think he's in a rush to change anything up top.
Marc Dumont covers the Montreal Canadiens as a special contributor to the Habs website. You can read all of his great work. Be sure to follow Marc on Twitter as well. Marc, we'll let you get in a pregame nap. It's going to be a late night in La Belle Provence, so we look forward to that, and we thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks a lot, guys. I have a poutine on the way, so I will need a afternoon nap. Yeah, absolutely. As you can tell, I've had my fair share of poutines. Yeah.
That's right. Take care, Marc. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Marc.
Thanks a lot, guys.
There he goes. Marc Dumont covers the Montreal Canadiens. He joins us from Montreal.
What a setup!
I miss Montreal.
Let's talk about that setup. We were all chest out. People are talking in the comments about how our mics sound good. We sound crispier. And then Marc comes with that big old setup, and now I'm like, we don't have IC mic flashes.
I think he's got a bit of a bigger budget than we might.
I was thinking Ezzy could get the old IC banner and have the IC banner behind him. That might be a good backsplash for Ezzy.
Yeah, I'll have to dig that one up, Dave. But by the way, thanks for picking up this mic at Staples. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, we're slowly but surely building to something here, guys.
Well, hey, it's a new world for us, right? Like, we were used to our pampered lifestyle with TSN 1290, so now we're officially independent, right? So we got to pick up our own mics. We got to dust off the old stereo headphones. Like, this is a different type of situation here, boys.
If those walls could talk, I mean, well, I guess there's nobody's going to get mad at us now. We can talk about the peeling paint and the fact that I think on more than one occasion we would have been live on air and the chair we were sitting on literally would just break underneath us.
Well, that was Ezzy. I say that was almost always Ezzy's chair.
Yeah, there's no question it was almost always Ezzy's chair. So I don't think that they're going to get too mad at us if we talk about how big of a the word dump would come to mind when you describe the quality of the station.
Have you guys returned your charge cards yet, or have you returned those? Or
the what?
Returned what?
The charge cards.
Yeah,
your corporate credit cards.
Corporate credit card. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's got much life left in it.
Does anybody call them that anymore? Is charge card is that like an old timey type of reference?
Yeah, I think my grandparents, and they've been deceased for a number of years now.
Like
maybe used to call them
Discover card. You used to have a Discover card.
Discover card is a different thing. I mean,
Discover card is a credit card. It's a not very.
But calling it a charge card is old school.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And Ezzy, you're a new school guy. Drew's the guy who's from 1929.
Well, I remember when I first started delivering pizza, you'd still have that old plastic thing, and you'd have to run the credit card on those.
Yeah, but then Ezzy, what would you do when the customer said, "Sir, where's our pizza?" And you'd be like, "Oh, sorry, I just ate it."
Yeah,
no, I didn't eat the whole thing, just a couple pieces.
That's he said no tip necessary. Just I took a couple pieces instead. I'm sure they were very accommodating and reasonable when you used to as these delivery days.
So it looks like Paul Maurice is speaking right now, but it looks like the Jets are going to go with the same lineup. So not a terrible surprise there.
No surprise, right?
Yeah.
Like we thought maybe Tucker Pullman goes in, Sammy Niku comes out, and then maybe there was one change on the fourth line, but
no,
I don't think any of us are surprised with that.
No, I mean, and again, they played well. And so, particularly, what kind of message would you be sending to both Niku and to say Nate Thompson? Because those are the two most likely candidates to come out of the lineup. Both of them, Niku was heavily involved in the Jets' second goal and played well in other circumstances in that game on Thursday night. And Nate Thompson gets his first goal of the season, and it's the game-winning goal. I'm not sure, you wouldn't be sending the right message at that point in time. And, that's not to say that Monday or Tuesday you won't see different lineups. In fact, I would expect that you're going to see some lineup changes, particularly on Tuesday night, the second half of the back-to-back. How do the Jets need to approach Jake Allen tonight compared to Carey Price? I mean, Carey Price obviously was fragile on Thursday night. Jake Allen has been playing at such a high level that I think it's going to be a different Montreal Canadiens team tonight.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that you change your approach at all, Drew, depending on, which goalie's in net, right? Because, both goalies are good goalies. Like, I realize the numbers say otherwise, but I think we all expect those numbers to be better, as the season progresses for Carey Price, and Jake Allen's numbers have been fantastic. I wanted to get something in though about, the schedule coming up. We talked about the back-to-back games, but if you guys have looked at the entire month of March, we know that there's a lot of road games, right? 12 of 16 on the road. Mm-hmm. There's only one portion of the schedule, I believe it's March 7th and March 8th, where the Jets have 2 days off. So the entire month, not only do you have 16 games, you have 3 back-to-backs, and you only have one stretch where there's 2 games. So it's going to be it's going to be a game every other night. And that's why you will see a lot of movement, both on forward and on defense. You're going to see Laurent Brossoit. If I had to guess, I'd probably say, you get 3 games or 4 games in the month of March. But you're going to see Jansen Harkins back in the lineup. I would expect, Dave, that you're going to probably see Christian Vesalainen back in the lineup. Tucker Pullman will certainly be back in the lineup, even a guy like Logan Stanley. So just wanted to get that in there, that just because the Jets lineup tonight is going to be the same, there's going to be a lot of movement, because that month of March, we're going to go back and look at that month, when the season is over and the playoffs are over. And, that's going to determine, how the Jets do this year with all of those. You've basically got a third of the season in 1 month. It's incredible.
To your point there, Ezzy, I would expect you're going to see Laurent Brossoit. I would assume you're going to see him on Monday. In the back-to-back against the Canucks. You have the Canucks obviously Monday and Tuesday. We know Brossoit is going to get one of those games. I would expect that it would be Monday, and then maybe Hellebuyck will be back into his sort of every second day routine for the rest of the week: Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Tuesday against the Canucks, and then Thursday and Saturday against the Habs. Definitely one of the next 2 games for Laurent Brossoit with the back-to-back against Vancouver there, Dave.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. And Laurent Brossoit has been playing very good, and the team obviously feels comfortable playing in front of him. So to me, you're not going to go wrong with either one of these goaltenders for the Jets. And I think, that's one thing that Paul Maurice has acknowledged, and is that you're going to have to lean on him. You can't have, to Ezzy's point, Connor Hellebuyck can't play 16 games in 30 days or something like that. So you're going to have a goaltender come in who can handle the workload. And I think Laurent Brossoit to this season has shown what we saw from him 2 years ago, which is that he's a more than capable backup. And that, look, I think the Jets had I don't quote me on this, but I think the Jets were the only team to have 2 tenders in the top 10 of goals saved above expectation, right? So I think, it's a good sign, right? You've got Connor Hellebuyck. People have maligned him a little bit, saying that he hasn't been playing to his level, but his numbers are still pretty good. Mm-hmm. And Laurent Brossoit, to that point, his numbers have also been very good. So I think you've got 2 capable goaltenders in net for the Winnipeg Jets.
Certainly the Jets are the problems the Jets have had so far this year, or that they're having as of late, are small potatoes compared to a lot of the other teams in the North Division. And that accounts for the Jets being, in technically 3rd place, but 2nd in terms of points percentage at this point of the season. And the month of March, we know, is going to be an absolute key one. One more game in the month of February that goes tonight, 9:00 against the Montreal Canadiens, a game you can watch on CBC and Sportsnet and listen to it on radio on CJOB. All the latest Winnipeg Jets news and audio, including from the pregame availabilities, that's going to be available at illegalcurve.com. We're going to let Dave Minuk and get started on doing his website work. Want to thank everybody who joined in on the chat today and listened to us live on YouTube. Always appreciate your support. Great conversation. A great community of Jets fans. Know that Saturday morning is the time to gather on our YouTube channel, and we appreciate all the comments throughout the course of the last 2.5+ hours. Want to make mention of our sponsors, give them a shout out one last time. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club and Zappia Group Realty support these fine local businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. For Ezra Ginsburg, for Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mandel. Thanks so much for joining us. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube.